What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Friday. I'm going to give it a second here for everyone to get connected. We're going to be doing one of our typical live streams. Jared was the first to get in on the comments, so, Jared, congratulations. You get first place today. Jack, you're here every weekend, so I appreciate that. Thank you for showing up, even ladies. This week's live stream is, just one with me. We're not having a guest or anything. We're going to try to get, I'm not sure who we're going to get next week. So far, I've been really trying to get Riley from Liberty Precision for next week, but he's being a little girl about it. So if you guys really want to see him, I suggest you message him and let him know how you all feel. At some point, we're going to do Todd Dead Air. But I also, today I reached out to Jake. That would be JK Armament. I thought that would be an interesting one just because of everything that's gone on, this year. He hasn't said yes or no yet, but I'm working on him. And I'm trying to get Nick from Echo Machine Nick to come on. Now, that's a dude who literally has such little free time, it's crazy. Between all the kids and the shop and the garden and the tractors and all just life for him is like a constant mess. Even just having a friendship, one-on-one friendship, he's got very little time throughout the day. You guys might have seen today he posted up he got a brand new lathe. So Echo Machine, their whole facility and everything, it's filling up, it's expanding, which is freaking great because the more machines he gets, he's always been a manual machinist for many, many years, and now converting over to CNC, he's able to streamline a lot of his repetitive processes. And you'll notice he just posted up what I think like 130 jailbreaks, and normally I remember when he used to just post 30 jailbreaks, and that was a big deal. So as he gets those jailbreaks and some of that list, caught up and some of it, he'll be able to do more of those one-off things you guys are looking for in the world. All the little, I want this kind of adapter designed or whatnot. So it's great that he's moving in that direction, and he's doing a lot this year. So I couldn't be more happy for Echo Machine, right? So hopefully he gets enough free time to do one of these with us. But I really want you guys to give me feedback on who you want to see, and I'll reach out to them. Now, I know a lot of people. Not everyone is like comfortable doing these lives, right? So it's kind of interesting to see like who wants to commit to a time and do it, whatever. So, but anyway, we're working on it. I want to do them as long as possible. So this week, what did we do this week? We're going to talk about a whole slew of things, and then you guys can also ask all the questions you want. But this week, if we want to hop over to the Patreon, today we just dropped our Omega Flow kind of can video or whatnot. For those who didn't get to get on the Patreon, see it. So, Omega Cone is basically something like this. Now, this isn't a true Omega Cone by way of like what comes out of like a Trident or any of the other SWR cans. As in, most of those cans had a radial face where we have a conical face here. But other than that, it's very, very similar. We've got a little bit different porting on the skirt versus what they have. But for the most part, the cone's doing the same thing, right? We got a clip. We've got a whole 180 degree. We're going to get some cross jetting into an annular space around. We've got holes for re-entry into the stack. That's kind of the Omega style of doing things. So we just metered this can. It did actually pretty well. Now, it's not a normal Omega can. I can't stress that enough because it has other features in it, okay? It's got deeper clips in it, for one. It's using a different baffle face. But it also uses flow tech as well as regards to the blast chamber area, right? So You know, we've got an annular coaxial area, blast chamber dumps in, it has an alternative gas path into a coaxial area, it can re-enter the stack. Something this, you know, this was built way before PWS, but if you guys saw the PWS BDE can that just came out, their first kind of two baffles doing something kind of similar. So yeah. Speaking of that can, did you guys see the first review that has come out that I've at least seen? Um, what the hell is that guy's name? Why am I drawing such a blank? Well, anyway, I bet you if you Google or YouTubed PWS BDE suppressor review, it would probably come right up. Now, he only collected muzzle data, which doesn't tell us pretty much dick as regards to what the shooter is experiencing. And even with the muzzle data, it didn't do really so. I mean, it didn't do bad at all, but it didn't do so hot. And I mean, when you look at that design, a bunch of conical cones with zero shoulders is a no-go for me. Typically doesn't work very well. I like that they used radials in the distal end. Cool, that tends to work really well. I like what they did for the blast chamber and the first two cones. That's cool, but that center portion of the stack that's doing the most work there is a big wiffle ball miss for me. So the can could easily be really better with a couple simple features changed. But that's what you get when you get dudes typically who are trying to get and break into a new market who don't really have the suppressor background. I mean, they did a ton of things right. You know, they're doing the 3D printing thing, which is pretty cool. By the way, pricing out what it costs to 3D print cans, it's not cheap. It's nowhere near as cheap. Like, they could have probably built that thing, assuming they had the equipment and the access and stuff, for way cheaper, you know, doing CNC and laser welding or just regular TIG welding, you know, on a rotary. But it's a step in the right direction, right? So we're seeing a ton of new cans, especially over the last few months. What else did we see? There's a new 9mm from, what's that slide manufacturer? We can pull it up if you want. We can do a screen share. But I got asked, you know, what I think of that can, and I mean, I don't know what's inside of it. So I have no idea. You know, no idea at all. GQ Armory, they've got their cans out. Now, I do know what's in those, and they seem to be. They didn't. Man, you know, I'm walking a fine line here, but they seem to be cool cans. Let's put it that way. I think you would be safe buying one of their cans if what you're wanting is that size or whatever, right? If that makes sense. So, yeah. We can do screen share now on my cell phone, by the way, which is going to let us look at a bunch of, you know, like pictures and stuff a lot better than what we normally did, where I'd hold it up and whatever. We will be able to look at like the social media and stuff a little bit more. But long story short, to end what we were just talking about in the very beginning here, this Flow Omega kind of quasi build here was really surprisingly cool, especially on 300 blackout subs, which I did not expect the subs to do as well as they did. For those who don't know, I mean, that's what you look like, right? You got a cross jet from your clip. Now we're clipped quite a bit deeper, but to our formulas that we use on the channel. So that takes care of this can. This can's probably going to get re-cored. It's probably going to get some of the features I talked about in the video about what I would do different now as opposed to, you know, 2 years ago when it got built, right? We've learned a lot since then. So the fact it does as well as it does is really a testament to, you know, what we've been doing. So that takes care of that. Another update for you guys, though. It's finally here. The Monster Giant Long can is finally here. So this thing is 10 inches of tube, Reardon Atlas XL. I mean, this thing is well over 11 inches. So here is my Turbo K clone next to it. And I mean, look at how much different that is. Here, I'll get this off the screen so you guys can see me a little better. Look at how much difference that is. This thing is a monster. It's huge. It's long. We're going to tabletop review this thing. I'll show you exactly what I did inside of it. It's using 3 different styles of cones, from conical cones to radials. It's going to take everything we've ever learned about, a non-coaxial suppressor and apply it to this guy. So pretty freaking cool. So, we're over 11 inches on this guy. Now, it's predominantly set up with its blast chamber and it's designed to work well with like 300 blackout subs, 300 blackout supers, 762 by 39 subs. Things of that nature was the target, but I guarantee you it's going to work pretty well with pretty much everything across the board. Not sure if we'll review this first like how we normally do, like 300 blackout subs, 556, 308, or focus on like 300 blackout subs, super, 762 by 39 subs, supers. Which that brings me to one last update before I start answering some questions. And that is, I'm thinking next week we take a little pause from new cans again, because I've been getting requests for more 300 blackout super data, and we finally have all the bugs basically worked out of our AR-47 upper. So this thing's 10.5 inches. It's been a fucking nightmare, from fucked up feed ramps to gas blocks and gas ports that weren't big enough and wouldn't align right, to light primer strikes. So now we got an extended striker in there, or I'm sorry, firing pin in there. Getting the right spring and buffer combination. That was a lot of fun. This thing has just been nothing but fucking problems, and it's finally good. The last time you guys saw it, I threw a slow-mo up, I think, on Instagram of showing that it had a lot of bolt bounce now that everything was properly gas set up and everything. So you'll notice I got Allen's taped to it because I got to take it out. I literally just need to do a final adjustment on the gas settings, and it should finally be fucking good. And we can start getting more 762 by 39 data. Unfortunately, with a full-time job and a full-time DDC bullshit, there's only so many hours in the day to do all these things. So I'm thinking next week, if I can, doing probably like our top 3 or 4 suppressors off of our ranking series and running them all 300 blackout supers, maybe 300 blackout subs, even though we already have the subs data. But then getting 762 by 39 super, 762 by 39 subs, doing a big video, looking at, where they all kind of fall into each other and satiating everyone. The beauty of our ranking system is we can look at the suppressor designs and then directly correlate, okay, it did this and our design is this, and, what is different about this can versus what results we got. We're doing so much more than just shooting suppressors, metering them, and going, okay, this can's pretty good, So, we're getting the models. We're looking, we do a lot more. It's just, no one does what I do. Okay, so before I talk about some of the other things I've got sitting here on my desk, let's see what you guys have been saying here in the comments, if anything. 3D printing is cool, but cutting chips is a bit quicker. So, right now, the printing side of things, okay? First off, the time frame to print one table of cans is crazy, right? It's about 100 hours. And it's about, I have the quote, and I don't know if you guys know this, but there's only like 2 or 3 companies that are actually commercially with 0702s printing cans for the company. So if you think like CGS Group or Huxworks or anyone's printing their own cans, they're not. They're designing their own cans, but another company actually prints them. That's pretty common, okay? So, you've got that company's got to make money on that can. You got to make money on that can. The wholesaler, distributor to you's got to make money on that can. So the cost is still sort of willy wonky unless you're really getting a lot of them, right? And an order for a 3D printed suppressor right now, to get it in the right kind of price range, is 5,000 units on a first go, and for a can you might not know if it will even sell. So it's a lot of upfront capital. Okay, and that, I mean, don't quote me on that exact number, but it's pretty close to that. So then think about that: one machine, 100 hours. So that's like what, 3 days, 4 days to print a full size suppressor. If I remember right, the bed size was getting something like, oh, I can't remember now because it's been like a couple weeks since we got all the like numbers and stuff, and I crunched them. But it was like 100. Like we could probably get like 100 cans a week or a month. I can't remember if it was 100 a week or 100 a month. It might have been 100 a week total, and that was like the fastest they can make cans, right? So it's cool, and it's tough, and it's expensive. It will let you do some things that you might not be able to do. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is when you 3D print a suppressor, there's still work that has to be done. It still has to go on machines. So for instance, you still got to go in, cut the threads, cut the taper on your end cap, clean up the bore possibly, depending on what's going on there. It's going to depend on every design. Like, for example, the PWS can, right? That's modular. So you got all those baffles that thread together. All of those are going to have cleanup work on a machine done. So even after you get that initial cost of printing the can, then you still have to go back and do work. So the design, if you're going to print suppressors, it really needs to be a design that you literally just could not really do for the most part on a CNC, or a more standard process, a more common process. That said, there are still benefits though, even from there. I mean, a printed can, I mean, that's their thing. I mean, there's lots of different types of grain structure and things of that nature. But generally, for the same thing, apples to apples, will be a little bit stronger without having welds, But now with some of the laser welding stuff, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the laser welder we got over at Ddc. I mean, it's pretty fucking cool. It's pretty consistent. We're getting really good results. So, a lot of these kind of older school thinkings are getting negated some as technology progresses. And since I have this in my hand, I shot it on 5.56. So I had to get an adapter, right? Because it's 5/8 by 24, 30 caliber bore. This is a Hyperion, 9.5 inches in length. We get an adapter from CGS Group. It does put the ports roughly where our blast chamber kind of venting and stuff is for the coaxial area. So I shot it on 5.56, and we'll probably do a short video on that maybe this week. It did okay. It did well. It's not the best. For a can that's literally, when you put an adapter on it, I mean, we're talking 10 plus inches here. And 175 OD, I mean, you probably hope for it to beat some 1.5 cans, but I definitely had some stuff that beat it, and we'll talk about it. We'll look at where it fell. It still sounded good. I mean, it sounded good. It ranked in where some of our other fairly good cans are, right? So, I mean, don't get me wrong here. Okay, what else are you guys talking about here? Can I borrow that sometime for research purposes? Yeah, the ATF makes borrowing shit really fucking hard, don't they? Is my AR-47 DI or piston driven? It's DI. Nothing special. Nothing too hardcore. Pretty fucking cheap upper for the most part. Not a huge 7.62x39 guy. This was more built as, to be a test host on the channel more than anything. I'm not sure how well, I can pull up pictures if you guys really want to see when I reconnect my phone here, but it just had a mess of problems, from feeding and gas regulation kind of stuff. And it's just been like one little thing after another. And you got to kind of work out every little bug till you can get where you need to be. Window. Yes, I 3D printed some adapter for someone and it took 4 hours. Could have cranked it out on a lathe quicker. Exactly. There are a lot of things that are not going to be beneficial to print, you know. Now, if you're that guy at home at some point, like let's say later in life, DMLS level CNC machines can be affordably purchased by the average guy at home who owns a lathe, right? So let's say they somehow magically get down to $5,000, right, for a very basic one. The beauty of it is, like, let's say that guy has no machining background. He can at least go and get an STL file and print something, right? Where if he had no, he wouldn't be able to machine that instead. It might not be faster, but at least he could do it. A CNC, it doesn't work that way, right? You got tool setups, you've got, you have to figure out where the tips of your tools are in relation to the work and all kinds of things you have to input. So it's not like you can just download a line of G code, stick it in your CNC machine and run it, right? So a little bit different there. But, we'll see. The world is changing. That is for sure. I got told me gay. That's funny. When am I moving to PA? Maybe when there's enough to do things full time, but I really don't want to move to PA. I'm not really wanting to move to Pennsylvania. I would much rather DDC came to me or goes to Texas or something like that, but I don't know what will happen. But, economy of scale. Maybe you'll hire me before then, Tyler. And then I'll move to Texas. Arizona is a very nice free state to live in for the most part. There's no true free states, but Pennsylvania, not so much. Yeah, Chris, by the way, is some Suppress Nation. I'm sure you guys have watched Chris's YouTube channel or been on his Instagrams or Facebooks at some point, more than likely. He's good friends with Hanson Brothers. I'm sure you guys have probably been on Hanson Brothers' website, bought some suppressors, hopefully, off of them. I like Hanson Brothers quite a bit. They carry a ton of different adapters, mounts, muzzle devices. So Hanson Brothers, good place. I like Capital Armory as well. Probably two of my favorite places currently. There's a few more lesser known places that I haven't personally used, but I keep hearing good things about. But I'm just not really on like a name by name basis. But I know there's a bunch of different places now in Texas that are really good to like shop and buy that kind of stuff from. So kudos to you guys. Texas has so much stuff, right? I'd rather live in Maine. I don't know. I have no opinion on Maine. Very pretty. It snows, but so does Pennsylvania. It's a little far north for me, but I could live anywhere. It's just the numbers got to work, right? Housing's got to be a certain price. Salary's got to be a certain amount. Got to be able to take all my guns without any issues. Got to be able. Dude, like I hear some of the stories from some of you guys, right? Like some of the stuff that's normal in some of the states you live in is just like mind-boggling to me. Like in Arizona, I could take all my SBRs, all my suppressors right now, I could stick them all in my pants concealed with no permits or anything, drive around fucking town all day long, get pulled over, tell the cops I got all that stuff, and they would more or less, for the most part, be like, okay, cool. Other states, you've got a concealed weapon. You can legally have it. You can have your thing. Oh, it's a big fucking deal. You know, you got to have. It's just Arizona's just a different place. You know, it's hard to leave that kind of environment. Yeah, kind of. I'm not by myself. I'm by myself when it comes to B team people, but there is an absolute fuck ton of gun stuff in this state in Phoenix, more than you probably realize. Dead Air, a lot of their baffles are made here in my home city. Bet you didn't know that. All the MIM stuff, like the Sandman baffles, the Sierra 5 baffles, made right here in Tucson. Another East Coaster, man. East Coast is nice to visit. That's about it. VA, we got mountains 2 hours to the west and beaches 2 hours to the east. All right, so look, in the city I live in, it's pretty fucking cool, right? You can be in Rocky Point, Mexico on the beach in about 4.5 hours. You can be at a fairly small fishing style lake with your boat or whatever in less than an hour. You can be on big lakes that you can, freshwater lakes, you can do whatever you want in 2 hours. I can be up in pine trees at 9,000 feet in altitude in 45 minutes from right where I'm sitting, in cabins and, you know, all that jazz. Um, and then I can be where I'm at right now, which is, you know, Sonoran Desert. So it's hot for 3 to 4 months out of the year. The rest of the year is literally t-shirt weather. No joke. December, I could probably wear this and go outside and be totally okay. Maybe not at night. It'll get cold at night. But during the day, you know, all good. If I want an American beach, San Diego is about 6.5 hours away. But you got to go to California. So I can go elk hunting at some of the best elk in the country in 4 hours from where I live. Be in the Show Low, Pine Top area, you know, go up to Prescott Valley. That's about 6 hours. Go up to Flagstaff. That's about 8 hours. You know, Vegas is about 7 hours. So, I mean, it's not a bad place where I live. It's not bad. So, uh, we are at max capacity with our two people. I know you are, but you know what? Resilient suppressors, guys, if they keep doing what they're doing, they keep plugging away, they scale up. You guys keep buying their really, really good cans that they're coming out with. There's plenty of room for all of us to succeed. DDC, Resilient, Reardon, Liberty, Otter Creek, you know, I don't know if you guys know what the term market share is, but there's this big market out there, right, for suppressors. And most of that market is taken up by a certain couple companies. That's great. We love those companies. They've been around for a long time. But, you know, we can grab that market share, and there's enough to go around for everyone and make enough money to design a bunch of cool cans and everyone have a decent lifestyle, hopefully, you know. And customers get the best cans in the market, hopefully, or as close to them as possible, you know, because it's always very hard. You know, one day's best can might be not the best can tomorrow, just depends, right? That's just how life is. Just like when you go to the car dealership and buy a new car. Go buy a brand new Corvette today. Next year, Chevy could come out with a completely new Corvette that's 10 horsepower more or 100 horsepower more with better suspension and wider tires, and the steering wheel fucking make you breakfast. It's just, that's how it is. You know, so you buy a new Corvette. You know, that's just what it is. But the good thing is your Corvette, if you bought it and you did your research, even the old Corvette's still pretty fucking good, right? You know, so don't buy shitty suppressors. Don't buy fucking Silencer Central suppressors. gotten into it. I don't know if you guys saw that post on, I don't know, I forget which NFA Facebook group, but it's like, why don't you hear Silencer Central talked about so much? Well, first off, kudos to them. They're fucking huge. They've got a bunch of CEOs and CFOs and dudes in suits and shit, and a giant warehouse with boxes to the ceiling of suppressors. But they make a suppressor. It's not bad. It's not a bad suppressor. But, so let's take a regular Banish, right? Just a regular Banish, not a gold. You're talking what? Almost $1,000. You don't have ASR threads, so you don't get to use whatever mount you want. It's a pistol radial style baffle. So it's going to work well on your 9mm kind of stuff, your subsonic stuff, your 300 blackout, your supers that are fairly low pressure. Okay? And so that's where you're going to get people go, my Banish 30 sounds great on 300 blackout. It was worth every penny. I'm sure it does sound really good on 300 blackout. That's absolutely true. But you paid $1,000 for it, and there's still going to be better cans out there that are better, cheaper, can use whatever mount you want to use. Now you get into the gold. Okay, so it's a regular conical style cone, like I don't know if I have one out right now, but just like, a conical baffle with a little bit of shoulder. Same thing your YHM's going to use, same thing your resonator's going to use. Literally the same thing. Static spaced. Okay, does well. I consider the Banish cans to be where the mark starts, right? It's the bare minimum of performance a suppressor should have, and then go up from there, right? So anything that can't do at least Banish good is just already junk in my opinion, no matter what. And that's my strong opinion. I have a very strong opinion. So, okay, great. So that means it's an okay suppressor, but it cost you, anywhere from a 200 to 600, 800 more than other cans with the exact same thing inside of them that have ASR threads. Literally, you can buy a resonator, which is going to do more or less about the same as like a Banish Gold. Banish Gold is going to be longer, though, so it's going to be a little better in that regards. But you also paid what? I think they're like $1,400 or $1,600. It's crazy. Think about that. I don't get it. Where they get you is the fact they got payment plans. They make the process fairly easy. And then the deliver to the door thing, right? So that's how they get you. Now, Silencer Central sells other suppressors too. That's the direction I would go, as long as they're in your price range and doing, what you want. So that's my very strong opinion. They bought an Enticer, by the way. Jared needs to know if you're allowed to marry your cousin in PA. I would marry my cousin, second cousin, no, third cousin. I don't know. How many removed do they have to be before you can marry them? It's a great question, right? I'm just fucking with you guys. I wouldn't actually marry my cousin. Maybe. It depends. Is she really hot? Is she like supermodel hot? Would anyone have to know about it? Does she like in the butt? Does she have a butt? Does she have big boobs? Little boobs? Medium boobs? Skinny? Blonde hair? Brunette? A lot of fucking decisions to make there. You guys are hilarious. If you can't marry your cousin, can you even say you're free? Oh my god. You guys are awful. I think only in Kentucky you can marry your cousin. Maybe some of the bordering states. New Hampshire is freedom capital. You're the second person in the last 2 weeks who's told me New Hampshire is a good place to move to and that the gun laws aren't too bad. So I'd have to look into that. Though you're definitely probably surrounded by fucking bad gun laws. Oh, the fuck up. Bro, you guys are fucking hilarious sometimes. Texas is like a free-for-all, basically any guns, swords, axes included. They gave us legal switch with... Bro, I mean, Arizona, you guys have like more. You guys are more well known for your ability to do that stuff, but I'm pretty sure Arizona might actually be more lax than Texas is. And I'm not even kidding. And it's always funny, like people from Florida always tell me how free Florida is and how great DeSantis is. Go fucking deal with concealed carry in Florida, and I think you'll instantly fucking realize that it's not easy. You don't need you don't need anything to carry concealed in this state. First off, I could walk out the door with a fucking wheelbarrow full of machine guns right now. The neighbors might look at me funny, but the police more or less would be like, okay. Mm-hmm. The market will be huge when, yeah. I know everyone's riding on fucking the Bruin decision, man, and some people are already reading way too much into that. Like, it's great, it's absolutely great, but like, nothing has changed. Hopefully, things will change, but nothing's really changed. Like Mr. Guns and Gear yesterday. Did you guys watch his quickly thrown together video on the RSP? Resilient Suppressors RSP. It's funny how Pew Science comes out with their drop, which, by the way, we beat Pew Science to the RSP review by what, 2 weeks? Fuck yeah. By the way, our data, Mod 9, Obsidian, RSP, ranked muzzle and ad ear identically to Pew Science's data. So take that shit for what it's worth. Not the first time either, by the way. Nomad, same kind of deal. Our data fit pretty much perfect. So, I'm going to gloat a little bit just because when I put the RSP data out, I got pushback from a few people. And they're like, well, we'll wait to see what Pew Science says about it. I love Jay. I talk to Jay all the time. Talk to him at least once a week. Every single week. We spitball shit against each other. Do I like every single thing he does? Absolutely not. Does he probably like every single thing I do? Probably fucking not. Do we agree on everything? Fuck no, we don't. I guarantee we don't. But that said, you get someone who shoots actually technically it's six rounds out of suppressor on one caliber, breaks down the data, gives you a research paper. It's a very well written research paper. It's excellent information. Absolutely excellent information. You don't go into a lot of things though, which is what we do, which makes us a little bit different. I don't think we are in competition, or at least we shouldn't be. I think we complement each other. Okay? They don't do Form 1 stuff. We do Form 1 stuff. We actually look at what's inside the can. We actually model what's inside the can. We actually talk about how the insides of the can work. We actually talk about what we might do differently to improve or change in the can. Okay? We review a can. We don't just look at whatever the caliber is that we're shooting on that particular. We're going to look at and those three are specifically picked because they cover a broad compass of scenarios, right? The host chosen is typically one that is going to be on the harder, more extreme side to suppress. So that way, if we go to a easier to suppress host, we already can basically read into that this can is like, this is the starting point. It only can get better from here on those other hosts. For example, RSP this week, it's shot on the HK. That's great. That HK tends to be one of the best. I shouldn't say best. One of the better. It's debatable in which the best. There's 3 or 4 pistols out there in the world that are considered like some of the best suppressor hosts. Okay, mainly because they are least affected by higher back pressure cans. Right. So when you shoot a suppressor on them, the gap between those suppressors should be a little bit narrower. a more restrictive can will do better on that particular host. Go throw it on something like a Glock 19 that's pretty back pressure sensitive, and suddenly those suppressors will widen in their performance gaps, right? So RSP had a good at-ear representation on that, beat everything. You go redo that same test on something like a Glock 19 or a Glock 17, now the RSP will stand out even more, if that makes sense for you. So that's why we use the Glock 19. It's one of the harder cans to suppress. It's pretty sensitive to port pop and things of that nature. So, it's all in how you frame it. Composite ratings, not a huge fan of. We started doing them and presenting them as well as of this last week, just so you guys, there's consistency in the market. We've added an additional round that we shoot on our at-ear side to give a larger sample size, so we get a better deoxy AV. And so we got our Form 1s. We go into more things. So again, we complement each other. We both support each other. Okay. So yeah, that's what I have to say on that. Did they legalize meth yet recreationally? Meth's a hell of a drug, man. I don't think there's any states that are going to legalize it. But you'll get a lot fucking done on meth. I'll tell you that much. You'll also lose your home and probably your teeth, probably your kids. But you'll get a lot done there in that first week, probably. Got to see a bunch of cans from your past guests tonight at Hanson Brothers. You guys are killing it. So, Chris from Suppress Nation, guys, I think what he's referring to is that he just got an Enticer, and according to him, it's now his favorite can, and he hasn't even shot it yet. So, I'm waiting to hear back from him how he likes it, but hopefully, I guarantee he's going to like it. I mean, if I buy a DDC silencer, will it be autographed by you, Joe? If you really want that, we could probably arrange that. It'd be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but it would be possible. So we'd have to form to it, make it, right? Once it's done, it would have to get mailed to me. I would sign it. I would have to mail it back to DDC. DDC would then mail it to whoever is your servicing facing FFL. And yeah, so I mean, it would add like a week of time, but it's doable if that's something you actually want, or maybe you're just fucking with me. Who knows? But I would do it. I'd do anything you guys want as long as it's not illegal. Joe, do you just do reviews, or are you a manufacturer? What's your brand? What I do is very complicated. I don't think many people who haven't been on my Patreon realize exactly what we do, though I've tried to be pretty transparent about it because, we do a lot of different things. So we, like I just was talking about, I mean, we do reviews, but we do a very different type of review. A review like you're not going to see anywhere else, okay? The main goal, though, is research and trying to get a large enough sample size of designs and suppressor data to then draw conclusions from, to understand suppressors better. Therefore, once you understand something, you can make something better, right? So I think I have a weird shadow that's making me look like I have like a fucking black eye or something. Let's turn that light off. That might help. Oh, these lights over here. I don't have studio lighting in here like I do in the other room for our video stuff. But so, that's how we started. We started because there was literally no one, first off, who could tell you how suppressors really worked. All the videos on YouTube talking about how suppressors work, they might get some of the really basic parts right, but for the most part, they're total garbage. Most of the information is just totally wrong, and it's very basic. then you would have all these people, right? We'd be on the forums. We'd be building our Form 1 cans or whatever. But there was never a way to know which designs were better or not. Some guy would say, oh, I shot my Form 1 this weekend against Omega 300, and it sounded about the same. Like, that was about as good as you could get, right? And a lot of the designs being used now, fast forward a few years, were more or less garbage. Some of them were like the original Banish, for example, which isn't garbage, but it's not great for everything. So that's what I set out to do. I actually took out a loan, $10,000 loan, and I said, I'm gonna buy metering equipment because I want to figure this out. So that's what I did. I got my first BK2209. I had no idea what to buy. You can't just go and buy BK2209s. I mean, you can get on like eBay and pick up a used 2209. That's true. But, what mic do you use? What adapter do you use? How do you operate it? What calibrator do you use? Because there's a whole bunch, which adapter for the calibrator do you need? How does this all kind of come together? Because I've been through 4 2209s and probably 5 microphones, and it's taken me that many to get a setup that works well, consistent, repeatable results. You can even talk to, like, Tyler's got a 2209, DDC has original 2209, Otter Creek has a 2209, and they'll tell you, my 2209 gets and a lot of it's our test procedure, okay, and the way we do things, a control can week in and week out. How I calibrate things, how well I've got everything set up, which, I mean, it's just the mill standard. But there's just a lot of little details. I focus on what the temperature is outside. I won't test if it's over 90 degrees outside because it starts to do weird things to the data. Humidity, if the humidity is really like above 50%, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to test because the results start to really get a little bit skewed. Now, a control can takes a lot of that out of there. Okay, so that's the other thing. You can go and shoot and collect data all day long you want with the right equipment, but if you don't process it and look at it right, it's not going to give you as much out of it. Okay, so we started off literally meter on the bed of my truck, and it took about, I want to say, about a year to really figure this stuff out. And it's all, and then from there, it really has, like, we were collecting the data well, but then it took another, probably 4 to 6 months to really start processing the data in a way with our graphs and the way we do it. And I mean, anyone who's followed me for the last 2.5 years will be able to see all the little changes we've made to refine our process. And in some ways it disappoints me because now you could be a suppressor manufacturer who's never done it well, and get on my channel for a month, and pick up little things that would set you ahead of 95% of people who are trying to do the same thing. But that is what it is. So that's one thing I do. So, I try to objectively review suppressors, and not just suppressors though, muzzle devices, pistons, end caps, the whole shebang. It all matters. Every single little bit of this matters. Powder burn, what kind of powder you're hand loading with matters for sure. So it's a little bit of everything, plus, mounts and muzzle devices are one of my big hobbies that I really like, and all of that. So that's that side of things. And then, DDC, Diligent Defense Company, I'm helping them design suppressors. So there is some, okay, well, how can you review suppressors and design suppressors? And I mean, yeah, most people probably couldn't pull that off because there were, a lot of people think there'd be conflict of interest. But that's the thing. Before I got with, before I was like, okay, working with DDC, it was extremely important to me that I had freedom to pretty much do whatever I wanted, or I wouldn't have done it. So my biggest thing was, look, I'm never going to recommend your cans, our cans, just because they're our cans. The data has to support the recommendations. So if we're not the best in something, that's fine. But I want to be able to say, look, and the best is already very hard to quantify, right? So you always see me, and I've said this a lot of live streams. If someone goes, what 308 cans should I buy right now? I'm going to ask you questions about what you're planning on using it for. I'm going to ask you, a very specific set of questions. And even then, I'm going to give you probably 3 to 4 options and tell you, why those are the 3 to 4 options, and 3 of them will more than likely not be a suppressor we make. Okay. And we're fine with that. They're fine with that. I do that. Right. So, I'm only like, I guess part of it's you got to just trust me and believe me. But at the same time, we actually go and we review the suppressors. One of the reasons I leave the shooting when we do a video, back a few years ago when this all got started, people would go and they would review a suppressor and they would leave out some of the shooting, or they would cut, do a lot of cuts and stuff in the middle of the shooting. And I would remember in the forums, people would go, maybe you're cheating of some sort or whatever. So I would love to eliminate the shooting out of my videos. It would make the video way shorter. We're going to go over the data and how it is anyway, right? I mean, you seeing me do the shooting probably isn't really giving you anything, though I do make some commentary, sometimes. But the point is, the reason it is in there is to see you, just see me collecting it, how I collected it, what I used to collect it. I'm reading off the numbers right there in front of you, so you have them. So there's literally no way for me to do anything fucking shady, right? And that is what it is. I mean, some companies, without naming any names, will still find ways to do it. You can watch some videos, and suddenly the muzzle will be in a different spot, or you could I mean, there are ways you could game the system if you really wanted to. So there's still an element of trust there. But hopefully over the years, for the most part, I've built it. And if I haven't with you, that is what it is. Hopefully I gain that back at some point. But it's yeah. I mean, it's not easy. Trying to walk the two lines, but we do it, and I think I do a good job at it, but I'm obviously going to be biased to that. I am the only person who knows the 100% truth, and for me, I know that I recommend what I believe is the best because of actual data, actual feedback I've collected from people, and I will never recommend a can to someone just because it matches the bore size they want or whatever. I'm going to recommend the can that I think is actually good for what you're trying to do. And I get a lot of people who text me throughout the day, and that's what they want to talk about is can recommendations and why. So feel free to do that. A suppressor purchase is a big deal, right? You got to wait a long time. It costs a decent amount of money. And there's a lot of them out there to choose from. And a lot of them you might not have even heard of. And that's the whole other side. A lot of people make a suppressor choice based off just, they might only know a few companies. Unfortunately, a lot of people make a suppressor choice just out of pure brand loyalty, just like they choose a brand of pants, which to me is freaking weird as fuck, but whatever. Or they make a choice, there's a whole slew of reasons people make choices, but we do what we can. I followed you in the Form 1 groups for quite a while. Well, I appreciate that. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, we've, what the whole thing, and this is why my name is Silencerstudent. It's right there in the name. I literally chose my name because I never wanted to project that there wasn't more to learn. And I'll get some people go, you should call yourself Silencer God or Silencer Master or Silencer whatever, And no, I know sometimes I can come off as a know-it-all. Sure, absolutely. I do probably know more about a lot of this than most people, obviously. But there's always something I can learn, and there's always someone who might know something about a specific area that I don't know. If you don't think that I don't talk to, you know, um, some of the people I call friends and ask their opinion, like today, someone asked me, I'll even show it to you, for a 45 ACP pistol can recommendation. Well, 45 ACP pistol cans aren't my thing. I don't really like 45 ACP. There, I said it. Doesn't mean I haven't shot them. Doesn't mean I don't have some experience with them, but I haven't shot as many as pretty much everything else, right? So while I have, from a design perspective, I know what 45 likes. I know what it typically takes to suppress 45 well, and therefore I can already just look at a design and go, okay, that one's going to probably work better than that one. They asked me about one suppressor that I had not had any trigger time behind versus about 4 that I had. So what do? I go to some dudes that I'm very close with, and I go, I know a few of you are big into 45 and have probably shot this suppressor. How does you think it does? And I kind of get an opinion, and then I'm honest with you about it. I go, hey, look, I haven't shot this can, but here's kind of some of my trusted feedback, and I try to help people as much as I can. I think a lot of times we forget how regulated all of this is, but so we do have to walk a bit of a fine line, and it is what it is, you know. I'm just glad it's not Pew Science. Okay, I'm glad I'm not Pew Science as well. Who is we? I'm not sure at what point you commented that, so depending on where I was in the conversation, we could be me, Ryan, Brandon, if we're talking about DDC. If we're talking about the B team, it could be me, Nick, Tyler, Darren, Andrew, John, Justin. Um, I guarantee I'm forgetting people because I'm on the spot. I mean, I need me a 3D printer that prints metals. Well, that's the problem. You've pretty much only thing that's kind of affordable for most people is going to be FDM, which is sort of like MIM in some ways, though not at all the same. But you're talking about a powder-based metal that is going to be held together with wax that is going to get baked out. The problem with that is that's not going to typically be structurally strong enough for use in a suppressor. Not only that, but the parts are going to shrink, and we're talking about suppressors, right? So, I mean, these things can't do that. So, until um, DMLS or something close to it becomes more affordable, which, I mean, we're talking a massive price drop for that to happen. I don't think you guys probably realize, too, how much gas, gas that has to be stocked to do DMLS. Every rose has a thorn. Hey, I like little phrases and shit like that. Who would win in a fist fight, Tyler or Bryce? I don't know. That's a good question, actually. Tyler is ex-military. Not that that really matters, but he's technically disabled. So I mean, Bryce has him on that. But Tyler could blow him up because he knows explosives. So maybe Tyler gets exploding fists, and voila. I would probably put my money on Tyler. Do you ever see a suppressor material being more durable than Inconel with a lower cost, higher nickel content? or molybdenum alloys. The problem is these types of materials, something has to cause them to be deflationary. So you have to have a market that is going to use them in such scale that it's going to push the price down at some point. So I guess my answer is probably not. Now, additive manufacturing makes them more affordable. MIM makes them more affordable. But I don't know. I don't know how much. First off, there aren't always going to be like you don't really need the super alloys for most people. It's not really till you get into some really fucking super severe shit that you really start to need them. Like a lot of times, if you could get away. So then that's the other thing. If we're talking about a printed tube or a billet tube versus a welded core tube, or a welded stack for that matter, now it gets a little funky. You take a welded stack and sleeve it inside a fairly thin tube, okay? Weld the stack then in place. That shit's really fucking strong. Like, really strong. Now it's a lot more work, right? So, I mean, you can get away with your 17 force and get a lot more. And then, go and let's say you really don't need Inconel on every baffle or Stellite on every baffle, even in your belt fed kind of shit. 3 to 4 baffles and you're going to be pretty. I mean, so you can, in theory, if you really know what you're doing and we're down to it, make a pretty fucking tough can that used some of the super materials, but didn't need to necessarily use all. If I was going to do it, and someone will probably fucking copy me now, I would probably run. I'm not going to tell you the baffle shapes because I don't want to get that fucking crazy here, but I would probably run a super alloy, 3 to 4 baffles. I would do a welded can and then a very thin outer tube that the stack is in. And then, okay, so I'd weld it, machine it, press it into a tube, weld it again, and I bet you that shit will be just top fucking notch compared to, And after that, I mean, that's when that's really where your 3D printed shit starts to come in because you can eliminate welds. Now that said, like I was talking about before, welds are getting better and better, and we're talking about just the weld, right? When the weld is the only thing holding things together. But you can come up with ways to put the baffles together beforehand before you weld it that are going to add strength. Now, some will say, okay, we'll thread them together. Some of I was testing, I mean, there's even limitations there because there's things happening without trying to give away anything that I can't give away. But, it's just about how complex you want to make things. If I buy an enticer, will you mushroom stamp it? I would dip my balls all over your enticer if you'd like, Eric. I just don't know the legal ramifications of that. So that would be something we'd have to look into. I mean, something with like tungsten in it would be pretty, we're getting to a point in chemistry and metallurgy where there is a bright future on just crazy fucking materials. But again, will they ever be able to be so common that they would get down into our level of manufacturing? Would there be if they even, let's say there is round bar of this super duper whatever, or tube stock of this whatever. Okay, great, fine. Okay, that's awesome. Now, how unobtainium is it price wise? I mean, we're already looking at suppressors that are $1,400 to $1,600 for a 30 cal suppressor. You get into like some of the 50 cal suppressors. I mean, look at what Thunderbeast just did with their 50 cal suppressor. I bet you that thing's price tag is going to be like $3,600. Remember, then the company, whoever it is, has to sell enough of them to make money on it, right? So, and other people are involved who have to make money on this. I mean, don't ever forget that it's a business. Now, that doesn't mean that you making money has to be the only thing, right? Like you can be honest about the performance of things and the constructions of things and run a business. Unfortunately, for the most part, that's the exception, not the rule. So they just got a new shop. Obviously, I'm not out there, but I mean, I guess I could fly out there. I'm probably gonna fly out there because right now my day job pretty much has been retarded, and I've had not really any ability to travel. I want to get out to Kalash Bash in October, but even that's looking like I might not be able to even make a fucking 3 day weekend, which pisses me off. Obviously, I'm going to SHOT Show in January. That's a given. No matter what, that shit's already done, fucking in the works. But at some point, I do gotta go out to Penn, and when I do, I mean, yeah, shop tour. And if not, I mean, I guarantee I can get Ryan or Brandon to do one at some point on a live. You know, the shop just got moved, by the way, and so I mean, it's kind of not all. Yeah, basically, it's a fleet of used hosses. Ryan and Brandon love their used hosses. Okay, why? Because they actually know how to fix them and make them do things that a lot of people can't get them to do. So, you know, getting that's their strength, right? Like their ability to buy something that someone else wanted to get rid of for a price, and then and fix it, right? So a lot of these come with fucked up spindles or beds or whatever, and then boy, does Ryan tear down these things and fix them. And then before you know it, you've got a machine that is making great parts. It's amazing, at a price that's a third of what anyone else is paying for machines. So that's how we managed to scale up and get so many machines. I mean, you look at Tyler right now, resilient. He's got one machine right now, just one, right? He's hoping to get a second one very soon, But he's going to have to spend a good chunk of money, north of $100,000, well north of it, Why? DDC, on the other hand, could probably with $150,000 come up with three machines that will do the same thing, just because of how good those boys are at doing that stuff. So Ryan's really smart when it comes to machines, and fixing machines. And that's the beauty of kind of our little trio right now. Like everyone kind of has a different skill set that they're really good at, right? So it's really nice to see. Brandon's really good at running it all, running the machines, getting everything assembled, running the overall business. He's really good at making some of the decisions and things of that nature. My strong suit, obviously, is going to be more on the design side and the testing side, and analyzing the data we collect, and that sort of thing. So like those three little things combined makes it. We've got a good little crew going on. The problem is there's only so many hours in the day. That's the problem. And Enticer has been, it came out and people have loved Enticer. So there's been a lot of demand for Enticer, right? And then I don't know if you guys know this, which by the way, let's talk about it real quick. So Enticer has now been scaled up in the bore to be able to shoot 8.6 black. Okay. So you guys right now, if you want an 8.6 black can, get Enticer. Our 338 bore can, right? Whatever. Well, we actually scaled that bore up to 400 in that can. So if you want to shoot 350 Legend through it, technically 9mm will fit through it. You can shoot it on that 8.6 can. Okay. So I was looking because this is how this kind of came up. A lot of people were looking for a fairly inexpensive suppressor that had a 9mm sized bore. And pretty much it looks like Rex was the only one making rifle cans. You could get the YHM R9. You could get, the Wolfman that can technically pretty much be shot on anything. Now, the YHM R9 and the Wolfman are more going to be your actual 9mm cans that just happen to be able to be put on rifles, right? Your Rex can, a little bit more rifle-y, uses a radial as well, but still not really going to be that superb across the board on like your supers, right? Your 5.56s, anything that's not, kind of 30 cal subs. Enticer, therefore, in that same price category, when we're talking 17.4, will smoke all of those, even with its a little bit larger bore. So if you're looking for a rifle can with a 9mm bore, that's what I would get. DDC stands for Diligent Defense Company. What do you think about 3D printed M300 baffles, 3D printed Stellite, just as strong as turn/cast? What's your thoughts on running a 30 cal can on a 5.56 weapon for second, third baffle war? Well, first off, I run 30 cal cans on 5.56 every day of the week. There's lots of 30 cal designs that are going to smoke most dedicated 5.56 cans. C300, M300, whatever you want to call it. It's a cool material. Energetic Armament has used it well. I really like its viability for a tube more than a baffle. I don't know that if you wanted to, let's say, go from possibly 17.4 to something maybe a little bit more, okay, maybe you go to C300 for your non blast baffle and maybe the first two baffles after that, right? Though most of the time your gas is slowed down, most of your particulate matter has already peened the first 2 to 3 baffles, and therefore 17.4, even in those situations, are going to be perfectly fine. Bore has a lot to do with this as well. Your smaller bore size is going to be a lot harder from a material standpoint than your larger bore size. Okay, so for instance, look at Otter Creek Labs tests where they went and they shot their 4.75 machine gun. Right, you're going to see cans that the first baffle failed on 5.56 that are 5.56 bore. That same can with a 30 cal bore probably would pass. Just because, I mean, think about that. The bore is larger, not as much pressure and not as much force is being applied to that cone. Okay? So, I mean, you're losing potentially, depending on the design, some performance. Some designs are actually going to be better on 30 cal, but 3D printed is also a broad term, right? You've got lots of different ways you can 3D print metal. So we're talking DMLS or FDM. I'll show you FDM baffles that fucking crumbled into a million pieces, The same baffle DMLS probably would have lived, right? Stellite, Inconel, still probably better than or I shouldn't say probably, they are better from a material strength and abrasion resistance point of view than C300. Even energetic armaments will say that to you. At least, I mean, why else would they go and take their C300 baffles and now put Inconel tips on them? So you got to kind of read between the lines sometimes, right? Let's see if I can show you some pictures of some failed baffles that are printed. But while this is trying to fucking connect, there it goes, 6156. What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry. What do you think about 3D printed M300, 3D printed still edge, so strong as trans? I mean, okay, so, I mean, cast can kind of be broad too, right? Like billet versus just casting a forging. Typically, anything billet is very desirable, right? Um, I would. There's going to also be differences in the printing itself, right? So some machines are going to. I don't remember all the terminology. I actually have it saved somewhere. I could even show it to you. There's a great thing on Reddit where Josh Parker at CGS and a few dudes who do additive manufacturing for a living kind of go into this really deep. And I read it a while back because I don't have like a background in additive manufacturing. Ryan does. He actually works for a company that does some of that shit for a living. So this is more his arena than my arena. So I mean, but there is just saying, okay, I'm going to DMLS 3D print things. Like some machines are going to do that better than other machines. There's different settings where the material comes together in a tighter, I think, like a tighter bond, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably not using the right words here, but to say one is better or not is very tough. Like, so if we're talking a bar of, let's say, C300 or M300, whatever you want to call it, versus a bar that was printed, there's still going to be differences there, right? Now, a lot of the argument is that the printed is going to have more uniform granularity, and that's how it's going to be stronger or whatnot. But there's even some debate on that, right? There's metallurgy, a lot of it is accepted. Like a lot of what we know can sometimes be very like this is accepted, but never really fully understood or tested or done at the surface level versus a full deep down look at things. So I'm trying to answer this as best as I can, but my thoughts on running a 30 cal can on a 5.56 weapon for third baffle wear. I mean, I run 5.56 all the time with all 17.4 with very little problems. The geometry of the cone, the bore size is going to play already a huge part. How big the face is already going to play a huge part. But what you're shooting, how short is the barrel, what's your firing schedule, there's really not too many people who really need even to go to Inconel or Stellite, okay, depending on what the baffle shape and the bore is. Look at the Sierra 5, its baffle shape and some of the baffle failures it's gotten versus Sandman's baffle, right? With the smaller shoulders. A lot of that has to do with you're getting a lot more lateral force on the baffle because of the wider shoulders. It should be that way. It's just the MIM didn't hold up, for example. But that's not talking about abrasive wear. But this shit's fucking complex, man, and it's a little bit hard to explain. But you're going to have to literally compare two exact things, not just kind of a broad is a 30 cal better than a 5.56 on the like it's too broad of a question. There's going to be scenarios where one is fine and one is not fine depending on what the build is. Generally speaking, unless you're shooting like 7 inches or under, 5.56, and you're planning on like just burning belt feds, you're pretty much going to be able to get away with one stellite or Inconel baffle, maybe two, and everything else 17.4. As long as it was welded correctly, the materials were the proper thickness. There's all these little things, right? Like you have to know when you're a manufacturer that many manufacturers don't know. So this is what the testing. They should do testing before they come out with their cans, right? Some do, some don't. I mean, they all do testing, but maybe not as broad as you might think. Also, should you clip the blast baffle? Yes or no? There is absolutely nothing wrong with clipping the blast baffle. Whether you want to or not is going to be up to you. And that's as deep as I can go into that answer. You like mounts. I like mounting jacks. Jesus Christ. Okay, you answered diligent defense. Jesus Christ, 3 years old. When is Ddc coming out with a can to take out the RS9? 9mm is pretty far down on the list right now. I've personally been working on a 5.56 can and a 22 can, so that's what my focus has been on. Until those two things are done, I've got a 9mm drawn up, but it's pretty far down on my mind. I've also got a few different designs for future versions of Enticer. So does Ryan, and I don't know. Tyler's got the 9mm world, and Tyler can keep the 9mm world. His can is great; it does really well, and I'm very happy for him. And so was anyone at DDC, and so was anyone at Otter Creek, and so was anyone at Reardon, and so was anyone at Liberty, and the list goes on. So everyone's very, very happy for him. Again, there's plenty of room, right, for everyone to have success. And yeah, Tyler's right. These boys are hunters, not John McClane like me. So yeah, at the end of the day, the company is going to go the direction of what Brandon wants it to go. Brandon is a big time hunter, bolt gun guy a lot of times too, though that's not the end of the world. So at the end of the day, it's technically his company, so the direction goes where he wants to go. If he texts me tonight and says, "Hey man, I really want to start working on a 9mm can," we're gonna start working on a 9mm can, but got to finish the projects that are in the works already. Already can't fucking make enough enticers as it is, so So let me go into this a little bit. Like, someone asked me like a week ago, maybe it was 2, what 22 can I would buy right now, and I answered the Liberty Precision Spark, and they said, "No way, Dead Air Mask," and I was like, "No, Liberty Precision Spark, it beats the mask," and they're like, "How could that possibly be?" Or whatnot. It's like, bro, do you think they sat down and wanted to make a 22 can? And pretty much anyone on the B team, for the most part, generally speaking, when they set out to design a can, I mean, you're going to look at what cans are already considered the best on the market and try to beat them. And you normally don't stop until you beat them, right? So, Spark, fucking super impressive. We just tested one of our protos against Spark. Spark beat it. Doesn't mean we won't beat it eventually, pretty confident we will. But Spark's a very impressive 22 suppressor. Problem is they're pretty much hard to find. But Liberty is supposed to start making more of them soon. He just got a few new machines, blah, 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 blah. They just got set up on the pad. Sparks should be coming. But right now, best 22 can, quietest 22 can, I would say is the Spark. For example. What 9mm can should I buy, and why should it be the Wolfman? All right, first off, it's so hard to walk this line, right? Like, I really like Dead Air for the most part. I don't like some of their products, but that's any company, right? You can't love everything about every single company. Some people do. Some people pick a company and then that's it. They're fucking married to it. That's not me though. Okay, some people will make a series of products, and some of their products will be great, but not all of them. And what's great today might not be great tomorrow, right? That's just how it is. Now, you criticize a product, some people at that company might take it personally. Supposedly, and I don't have exact. No, I don't want to go into that. Never mind. But anyway, Dead Air's got their carbine 9mm can. A lot of people love it. That's great. But I'll tell you now, you can get a cheaper, smaller, quieter can going to Brazilian. So, will Dead Air in the future come out with a new can maybe and beat everyone? It's possible. I doubt it, but it's possible. I hope they do. Because again, I'm a suppressor nerd, right? I want everyone to. I like this competition because it furthers innovation, right? Some people in the suppressor world, manufacturers, when you criticize their suppressor, take it extremely fucking personally, and one day they're your friends and the next day they might not be, and it sucks. It's like, just because your suppressor isn't number one anymore doesn't mean I can't like your suppressor, doesn't mean I can't like you, doesn't mean I can't like your company, doesn't mean I can't believe that in the future you're going to come out with something even more, or doesn't mean I didn't find inspiration from you. It's like it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. you know it's crazy, some of the stuff that goes on in the behind the scenes. And there's a lot of gossip. It gossips like girls in a high school, so you never know what's true either. Like, I'll get like I'll drop a review, let's say on a Friday, right? And then a few hours later I'll get so and so fucking is pissed off at you, because you talked bad about their can. It's like, well, first off, I doubt they even watched their fucking review, because I never really talk bad about anyone's cans. I highlight the positives, I highlight the negatives, I say if this one got beat or not, right? So without getting like into a specific company or specific can, it's tough to review suppressors and keep this fine PC line. At the end of the day, I want to be everyone's friend, but I also want to, of course, tell the truth. And I could literally just publish what the data, where the data goes, right? Data is what drives all of this. You should be the silencer teacher and we're the students. See that? That's the thing. Like, I guess in some ways that sort of makes sense, but at the end of the day, I learn from this stuff too, right? Even like sometimes we'll do tests and I already know what the outcome is going to be, right? I already know. I just know because that's part of where the beauty comes in. When, like, I don't know why, but a lot of times I can just look at something and I can just kind of mentally, I don't know if it's like autism or something, but like I can mentally understand like what's going to happen. and that kind of, gets you in trouble. But even then, I still do some of these tests and I know what's going to happen, but now it's like confirmed and I learned something. Or, we do a test and I learn something sometimes when we're looking at the data together, just like you might be learning something. So again, we're all doing it together. We're all together. So maybe I'm like the teacher's assistant, right? A little bit more senior, but still learning, still in training. I don't think anyone, and I think that's where a lot of companies get in trouble actually, because they make a good can. It's very successful. They think they really, really understand this stuff. And I've been guilty of it too, right? There's been little periods where like I think there's nothing like nowhere else to go from here. I'm like, man, there's nothing else for me to learn. And then I'll try or we'll do some videos and stuff. And there'll be like a little fucking tidbit in there that will change everything for me and take me down a whole new, oh, you know what? Like that type of thing. So I think some companies get successful, but then they also stop learning in some ways. I don't know. That's just speculation. Okay, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just trying to make sense of, again, without naming any names or pointing any fingers, some companies who have made good stuff, but their newer stuff is kind of disappointing or basic, or just more or less copies of their older stuff, just with little like things changed. Bro, I don't know what a jorts are. Jorts shorts, maybe? When will we ever see lever guns on the channel? I miss the old sombrero days. We need cowboy hats. Hey, I've been thinking about retesting that can, actually. It still needs to have some changes done to it based off information, which means I got to send it out and pay an arm and a leg to have it record. But that's a cool, can. Obviously, there were some geometry complications there that can't be overcome without a total, ground up remachine redesign. But as far as lever guns go, I literally don't own a single lever gun, so I'd have to buy one. But lever guns are cool. Speaking of older cans that we are going to shoot, on a whim, I was digging through the safe, and I had no idea I still owned this. I thought I had recorded it, but it was the All Progressive Super Duper can. I don't know if you guys remember what the Super Duper even looks like, but it's a conical cone with a pocket, big flat shoulder, really tight corner spacing. And I was like, this would be a good data point, because while we really focused on the mixed can versions of the Super Duper usage, all Super Duper usage is intriguing, especially with what we've been doing with high gas capture storage cones. Okay. And then venting. So I took it with me when we shot the Omega Mix can, whatever, the can we just reviewed yesterday. And I shot it. And the data was actually pretty interesting. So we're probably going to go over it. Now, I hesitate to go over it and publish it because I don't want anyone to think like that I'm just redoing old shit or something like that and whatever, right? But the results were ones that I think are very worth talking about in the lens of we've learned so much and we've changed so much since when we first originally shot that can. So it's right here. I mean, if you guys are cool with it, we're probably going to talk about it. I think it's going to be beneficial. Something someone said today when they were discussing the RSP gave me a kind of a wild, crazy hair. I do not recommend you doing this. Obsidian 9mm. Tyler's going to literally hate me right now for sharing this. He's probably never going to forgive me. This is the modular section off an Obsidian. This is it on an RS9. Probably going to shoot this. We'll probably get an end cap strike because, it's an Obsidian and that's what they do. But you got an RS9, you got an Obsidian, and you want it longer, which is definitely going to bring down those muzzle numbers with all those really tight cones in the back of an Obsidian. Because we're going to add a bunch of gas clamping in the distal, right? Yeah. So I don't know how long that is. I could go grab a ruler. But this is like 11 and a quarter inches. And we're about 2 and a quarter shorter. So this is easily probably over 9 inches. I mean, here. We know this is like 10 inches. This Hyperion. Oop, camera's over here. So we're shorter than this. So, I mean, we're like 9 inches. So, I mean, if I want to say, how long is the Obsidian section? I forget. It doesn't quite sit all the way down, so it might not be perfectly centered. Though looking through the bore, I mean, it does look fine. But it's something I'm probably going to do. So, Tyler, be prepared for a warranty. Sorry, buddy. In Florida, jorts are considered fancy attire. Learn something new every day. If I have a skirtless cup that is stuck sideways in my can, what is the best way to get them straight in the tube or get them out? So hopefully you haven't forced them into anything crazy yet, because goddamn, you can ruin them quickly. You can ruin an entire suppressor quickly. I mean, I've got them sideways before in my life as well. It's not simple. So let's imagine this end cap was, a cone, and it's gotten a little bit crooked, right? You've got to try to figure out a way to straighten this, right? So obviously this is the side over here you would think you'd probably hit, so you can get it to go and go like that, right? Well, I mean, that's true and all when something's crooked like this, but you also might want to come, because a lot of times this is the part that's wedged, because there's a spacer, right? So it's kind of wedged inside of that spacer a little bit. So you kind of almost need to get it out of there. But then you got to watch this corner kind of doing the same thing. So I would attack it with like a metal rod. So I keep, for example, I'll be right back. I just grabbed the first two I could find, but I keep, a piece of longer bar stock, for example. I keep pieces of tubing of different size. And, so you can get in there and kind of hit, in the corner. You got to be very careful, though. You can easily fucking damage the shit. You do not want to get more stuck, okay? Now, when I go and press baffles in and out in general, I'm going to use a piece of tubing, because the last thing I want to do is press on the baffle face, too. right? So, like, I've got 1 1/4. I've got like a bunch of different pieces of tubing because I want to be able to press typically like on the actual shoulders of cones. So skirtless cones are tough. They're the ones that are going to do this shit. This is why even a skirted cone, if I'm going to shorten it, you'll never see me go under about 350 thousandths of an inch because I want that skirt, because that skirt's what's going to keep it from doing this inside the tube. Same with spacers. I tend to try to never use a spacer less than 350 thou. Not always possible. If I'm in a situation where I'm going to be using a skirted with a spacer, right, I will much rather have a more spacer, so 350 or up, and less skirt, but I really don't want less than like 0.15 typically, unless it's a distal cone. If it's like the last cone or maybe second to last cone, right, where it's not going to be in the center portion of the stack, then not nearly as important. You'll see me with totally skirtless last cones sometimes, depending on my end cap. I've cut all this, skirt down if it was, whatever or whatnot. But unfortunately, there's no really good answer. The other thing I would do is I would soak that motherfucker in the sink with some Dawn dish soap. Make sure it's good and wet. Make sure if there's any carbon in there, it's all broken up. But it's more for lubrication purposes than anything. Dawn's just amazing stuff, believe it or not. But you've got to be careful. You get that thing more wedged, you will easily destroy your suppressor. If you do get into a situation where it's got to be, you just can't get it figured out, stop what you're doing and send it to an FFL. Send it to alvadevons.com, send it to Nick or whatever. Because even if they have to destroy the baffle, the tube is, what you do not want to destroy. Okay? So in worst case scenarios, we can machine a piece of tubing, right, that closely matches the inner diameter of the tube, and then use a press to at least press whatever's in there out. Typically, 90% of the stuff will be perfectly fine. It'll probably just be 1 to 2 baffles that might get fucked up at that point. But at least your tube is good, your engraving is good, a recore can happen. Maybe you only have to replace 1 or 2 cones. Be very, very careful. I'm sorry you're in that situation. I've been there, though. I've managed to fix it every single time without having to go to those extremes. But I've seen people, post pictures and they've cut their tube open and, whatever, and then it's junk. So I was looking at 309 stainless, Nitronic 600, or 60, I'm sorry, and RA 330. I've looked at Nitronic 60 before. That's the only one of the 3 out of this list that intrigues me a little bit. So there's a lot of kind of misunderstanding about surface hardness and abrasion resistance. Something with high surface hardness isn't always the most abrasion resistance, believe it or not. It's kind of weird how that works. So then you also have to remember, right? Maybe you pick a material that's super abrasion resistant, and it does. But what happens when you get it hot? You're shooting 5.56 more than likely if you're really super worried about this. What happens when you get it 1200 plus degrees? Typically, your 300 series stainlesses, no matter what they are, lose a ton of strength after about 800. Then you get into a weldability issue as well. So, like, let's say 440, high surface hardness, right? Pretty good for muzzle devices. You go starting to try to like weld it and everything, it gets warped really easy. Because again, I mean, we got to make the suppressor straight, right? So it seems a lot of times like when you find a material that looks like it's going to solve one thing that you're trying to solve, it typically ends up creating an issue in another area a lot of times. So, I mean, when you're looking at a lot of these alloys that have been around for a while, there's also been a lot of people who've fucked with them already in this arena. I'm not saying that we've already got all the answers by any means. I'm saying absolutely go out there and try some of these other things if you're, able to legally. Um, but these are just, I guess, what I'm trying to say is the things to keep in mind when you do it, if you do it, if you're allowed to do it. So molybdenum, there's a lot of debate, at least. So a lot of people, when they think about Inconel, right, you've got 625 and 718, right? 718 tends to be the one that, from a Baffle perspective, are going to gravitate towards. But I would really, I mean, it's also going to, of course, depend on the heat treat. You don't molybdenum and some softness in the material as well can be a good thing, even in abrasion and erosion resistance. So I personally have never seen anyone actually machine, let's say, three different geometries of the same, like pick a baffle, make it three different kind of geometries, make three cans that are 625 and three that are 718. And then, of course, you got the whole heat treatment thing, which there's a few different heat treatments for our 718. And then test them in that kind of severe condition. I would be very interested to see how 625 actually does. Right now, by default, most people are going to go to 718, and they're probably right. Um, but it would be very interesting to see. You there have been a bunch, like, again, if we go back to like Otter Creek's test they did not that long ago with the 4.75 inch machine gun, there were a few cans. A lot of it didn't get published because it was private, but there are a few cans that are using Inconels, and again, there's just saying Inconel is very broad, right? Because you obviously have different grades. Then you have different types of production, right? Was it DMLS? Was it, maybe it was MIM? Maybe it was machine billet. You know, um, what is the geometry like of the cone? Because the geometry is absolutely going to matter here. So a failure in one thing doesn't necessarily mean a failure in another area. Hopefully that makes sense. So it becomes extremely hard to make concrete conclusions on what metal is superior without a series of very expensive and thorough tests and someone who really understands what all is going on. So it's great to do these little kind of one-offs. I mean, we do learn a little from them, but from a very scientific standpoint, to really draw some real deep, lasting conclusions, you would need to do something like that. And I would be super interested to see someone do it. I want to see a lightweight suppressor made from the same magnesium alloy as the V7 handguards and receivers, but magnesium is boom. That's not, see, that's the thing. So a lot of people instantly think magnesium is not viable in a suppressor. From a heat tolerance and an abrasion perspective, mag is going to be pretty much just like your grades of aluminum. But when you get into something, okay, let's say we're picking an application where that would be fine. Just like titanium, right? A CP titanium, a pure titanium, when you're machining it without coolant, very easily is going to catch on fire. You machine a titanium alloy, very hard to catch on fire, right? So alloys of magnesium, it's going to be the same kind of thing. Like we used to bust up transmission cases and transfer case cases for engine, just like engine blocks used to be made out of magnesium alloys, and then use acetylene torches to try to light them on fire. You wouldn't believe how hard it is, first off, to get them lit, and second off, they burn out extremely quickly. So again, a pure grade is going to be completely different than an alloyed grade of magnesium. So look to an alloyed grade of magnesium and actually do some real testing, put it through some real paces, and I bet you'd be surprised. Your thing you're going to come up against, though, is to market it to customers. Because, again, just like you've just said, there is already this perception that it's bad, right? I know Nick, Echo Machine Nick, he's used magnesium in some suppressors. I don't think he does anymore. For a lot of the same reasons we're just discussing, but it's not viable, I guess you could say. It's always an evolving and learning process. Fuck yeah, it is. Always. There's a guy from the UK who has a homemade DMS printer he's been working on with a 200 milliwatt laser. As technology gets better, I see this as pure alloys becoming more popular, as you said. Exactly, you're looking like to print right now a suppressor, let's say out of Inconel, or you're looking at probably about, when we're talking DMLS, right? Full size suppressor, you're looking at somewhere between about $70 and $90 worth of material when we're talking DMLS from the math that I did. Could be a little wrong, but which is a lot fucking better than what it costs to machine baffles right now out of Inconel. You buy a 12-inch bar of Inconel, let's even just say 625. And I mean, you're spending north of $100 and something dollars. I actually haven't looked at it in a while, So that's like pre-pandemic. So it's probably higher now with the way everything has gone, especially nickel's, fucking gone pretty crazy. So I mean, yeah, you get a couple baffles out of that for sure. But we're talking an entire suppressor, right? Then you're talking about the fact that no inserts are wearing, no tools are wearing. So there starts to become that cost benefit there. But then you're also looking at a time component, like we were talking about earlier. It takes a long time to print a suppressor, very long time. So now you're looking at the biggest table. How many can you print at once, the most possible? That's where it becomes deflationary. Can we do an event or a meetup? Yeah, absolutely. We were actually supposed to do one this Labor Day weekend. We planned it about a year ago, but unfortunately, first we had all the bullshit with Form 1s going south. Okay, so a lot of people have kind of disappeared, right? Second, my day job kind of went to shit because of one of our main guys. We're a fairly small store. Had to have a liver transplant, so it's meant I've pretty much been working 6 days a week for like the last fucking 6 months. Hopefully that's going to change. We finally are trying to make some changes, but I still don't see it getting better for at least 3 months. So I haven't really had much time other than pretty much for me, I go to my day job. While I'm there, I do a lot of my internet-based stuff. I can CAD while I'm there. I can a lot of times listen and edit video while I'm doing my day job. So that's how I get through a lot of that. And then the weekends, Saturday, that's when I get ready, or if I have to build something or do something, or model something up. A lot of times, that's my Saturday, right? And then I do whatever personal bullshit I've got to do. And then Sunday, I wake up real early. We do our metering for the week typically. Come home, and we immediately have to break and record that data. So it goes into a binder. right? And then from there, I got to build it into Excel sheets and do what we do. And then throughout the week, and then Sunday, I gotta finish up and get Tuesday's video, our tabletop review, done and edited. And that takes me, my evenings, typically Monday night. And then Tuesday during the day, we typically get it uploaded. I get my thumbnail done. I get my typed whatever done. And that's Tuesday, which leaves me Wednesday, Thursday to finish up our Friday video, typically recording conclusions, intros, things of that nature, and editing it all, and then we upload it Friday. You guys watch it Friday evening. We come home, we do the live stream, and it starts all over again. On top of that, I fit in all my DDC stuff, so there's not a ton of free time to say. So I'd love to do more, and I will start to be able to do more when my day job kind of calms down. So, but an event would be fun, To give up a weekend means I have to give up typically the videos for you guys for a week. You know what I mean? But I want to do an event. I want to do get-togethers. Last Sunday, some dudes came out and shot for a little bit. I've had some guys come over before. We just kind of did a little very low key thing. I would like to. I'd like to go to some more events. Like I was talking about, I'd like to go to Clash Bash. And do some more of that kind of stuff. So it's all in the cards. I'd love to get together with everyone, to be honest with you. There's a group on Telegram here, and it's just like Arizona local dudes. And, I got invited to it like a month, 2 months ago, and I thought it was going to be great. Like dudes were going to get together, shoot on the weekends, meet up. I've been invited to like one thing. And for the most part, these guys just send memes to each other all day. So it's a little bit disappointing, Like I said, I'd autograph anything you want. I don't know if you're screwing with me or not, but what else? Haas are great. I miss working with Haas machines. I mean, yeah, Haas's, for what they are great, for sure. There's definitely much more capable stuff out there. Doosan is getting pretty freaking popular, just depends, budget, availability, what you're trying to do, what already, what tooling you already have. Um, every machine choice is a big choice, right? So the guy who makes my tubes is actually Ryan's brother. Okay. So it's funny I'm running a Ddc End Cap on it. Yes, I know you bought your new Ddc End Cap. So for those who don't know, Ddc End Caps are the same. They're the same pattern as dead air from a thread and taper perspective. So anything that takes a dead air end cap can use a Ddc end cap. I mean, it's a fairly simple end cap. I mean, that's the face of it. They're very budget friendly. They're around $50. We engrave on the back side what your bore size is, and our name and things of that nature. So if you're someone, let's say, who has a Sandman with a 30 cal end cap and you plan on shooting 5.56 and want a 5.56 end cap, but you don't want to shell out, $90, $100+ for a dead air end cap, well, guess what? You can buy a Ddc end cap. It'll work. Vice versa. You have an enticer that uses obviously Ddc end caps, but you want to get a Sandman flash cap, let's say. You can buy Dead Air's end cap, put it on there. It will work. A lot of people have, suppressors out there that use a Dead Air style cap. So Didn't need to reinvent the wheel here on this. Would I do it different if I was redesigning it from the ground up? Yeah, I would. You know, I would put threads, or I should say, I would put a taper before the threads. That would be a big one. But it works, and we wanted that cross compatibility. I am drinking what I typically drink. I only drink typically Friday evening. Rest of the week, no alcohol for me. I might have a beer, but it'll be one. Obviously, alcohol not super healthy, especially for a dude of my size. But I'll tend to tie one on, and it's gonna mean vodka and cranberry juice. So one cup has more or less vodka with a splash of cranberry, and the other one's just a chaser of cranberry. See, Tyler knows vodka and cranberry, as usual. Yeah, exactly. What's your favorite ramen flavor? Chicken. But I only put like half or less of the packet in the water, save the rest for after, drain all the water off, put the fucking powder in there, stir it up real good. I only eat ramen if I'm sick. It's like my version of soup. Short of that, we're not eating ramen. I like to eat, obviously. A lot of the reason I'm heavy set, I don't know if you guys ever seen me when I was younger, but I was a very skinny guy. But I got in a car accident. I had a few health problems. Some of the medications they put me on pretty much fucking nuked my metabolism. Then I shattered my foot at one point. And I couldn't walk or do anything for 6 months. That fucking really sucked. So that didn't help. And my life's been a fucking series of disasters here and there with good stuff in between. And yeah, it's all kind of added up over the years. Breakfast of the Champions. Ain't nothing wrong with Tito's, grapefruit juice, and salt. Well, that is definitely something. Would you be able to explain how the e-brake would help the tone of my Sandman S? Well, brakes like that are something I looked at really heavily years ago because it always bothered me, right? There's pretty much no doubt that adding the e-brake would make it quieter, okay? We're adding length, we are adding volume, we are adding a way to control the release of pressure to the atmosphere. We are redirecting it in a lateral form. Our little holes are going to help burn up some of that flame and that powder. That any remaining unburnt powder that's reached that point, is going to help be burnt up by all of that. Is that though better from a suppression standpoint than have using just making the can longer to the same length in general with baffles and internal design better? That was always the question I really trying to dive into and asked myself. The answer I found is, of course, designing the can that length then would be better. Now, as a consumer of Form 4 suppressors, you don't get to design cans, right? So then you're in a situation where, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a suppressor. I want a suppressor that's 7 inches, let's say. Why would you choose that over than an 8-inch can if you plan to pick an e-brake? I can tell you why. Maybe an 8-inch can doesn't exist. That would be better than that Sandman with the e-brake. That's not true. I mean, there's just pick the best suppressor possible in the shortest configuration you want from the get-go, and no e-brake needed. But if you do have a suppressor like that already purchased and you are unhappy with the performance, the e-brake is an easy way to add additional performance to it. I would argue if you're going to shoot 5.56 on a Sandman, an e-brake with a 5.56 end cap is probably going to be better than some of the dedicated 5.56 cans out there. Not a huge fan of the Sandman series. It's a very, very basic cone, pretty wide progressive spacing. For when it came out, yeah, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. The bar was here, and they came out and put the bar now here. But since then, obviously, better stuff has come out. I don't really get why the Sandman still sells the way it does, other than the fact that so many people own one that when someone goes, "Hey, what 30 cal can should I buy?" Oh, I got a Sandman. I like my Sandman, so you should buy a Sandman too. Not realizing that, again, there's been forward progress since then. And there are features in the Sandman, that might make it attractive for some situations. Sandman is pretty hard to destroy, for example. So if you are someone who's out there shooting, some pretty extreme conditions, then a Sandman might still be a good choice for you because you're not as worried about sound suppression as you are just the can living on whatever it is you're shooting, right? Everyone is different. Every consumer of suppressors is different. They're looking for different things. That's where it kind of grinds on me some, because a lot of times people will put a post out. They go, "What suppressor should I buy for?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'll look through the recommendations, and it'll literally just like, oh God, why are people recommending these things? And some people will recommend, make good recommendations, but literally probably 80% of the recommendations in a Facebook post, in an NFA group, are just not probably the appropriate recommendation for what this person is trying to do a lot of times. Or the original poster has not put out enough information in to begin with for anyone to really to be recommending anything anyway, right? I mean, if you just literally wrote a post and said, "What 30 cal suppressor should I buy?" That's a pretty broad question, is it not? I mean, you should buy Enticer, obviously, right? But maybe you're going to shoot it on belt-fed machine gun. Therefore, Enticer's probably not the appropriate can for you. I'll happily say that. It's not that it wouldn't take, 100 or whatever rounds or 200 rounds. Like, if you're just going to sit there and burn it down, though, I mean, it'll fail for sure before probably an all Inconel CGS group Helios QD, for example. Every situation is different. Can I use any 30 cal can for 308? Well, basically 30 cal cans, that just like saying this is a 30 cal can, broadly speaking, means this can was developed for being able to withstand 308. Now, you will find AR-10s are a lot more sensitive to back pressure and things of that nature than your 308 bolt guns, obviously. Okay? So every 30 cal can out there isn't necessarily appropriate for an AR-10. Every 30 cal can out there is probably going to do half decent, of course, on 300 Blackout or 7.62x39. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that great on subs, potentially, though it'll still probably sound good on subs because there's like a base, like a shitty suppressor on 300 Blackout subs will still sound pretty good, right? But there are some that are approaching amazing, right? So let's go Nomad, right? We tested Nomad. The way Nomad works, it takes a lot of pressure and gas volume for it to really work, as when we're talking about the L, very effectively. So when you shoot it on 308 bolt gun, it works great. You shoot it on low pressure 300 Blackout subs, it does well. You're going to like it. It's not going to be the best. It's going to get beat by other cans for sure. Because again, it's not effectively the type of pressure that the can is being exposed to, and the amount of gas volume it's being exposed to in that particular coaxial design is not going to utilize that coaxial design well, or at least as well as it does, with the higher pressure stuff. So there's really not a one size fits all necessarily, but most cans of the higher tier cans, right? Your Nomads, your Hyperions, your Enticers, your Hydrogens, your Dominus, your Ultra 9s are pretty much going to do really well across the board on things. Some, but it doesn't mean in some of the areas that you're shooting aren't going to get beat by smaller, better cans that have a design that might, tailor better to that. So that's one of the things we do in our ranking, right? So when we rank our cans, we do a ranking thing. Here's 300 blackout, ear, muzzle. Here's 556, ear, muzzle. Here's 308 bolt gun, ear, muzzle. All the same suppressors, all one page. You can cross correlate muzzle to ear. You can see, okay, it did here on 308, but on 300 blackout it does this, right? And you can draw conclusions fairly simply, at least as simple as I've been able to come up with over the years. So every design is going to do things a little bit different. What would you say is the absolute best can for flash suppression besides Surefire? The polonium looks very promising. So I guess you're instantly. I mean, the way you're saying this, you've said Surefire, so I'm already. Literally, the only Surefire stuff that I'd ever buy is 5.56 stuff. I'd never buy a 30 caliber Surefire can. Maybe the one that the SPS for 300 blackout, but even then, I wouldn't buy that either. I think there's better stuff at this point. You're predominantly focused on flash suppression. That's a toughie because barrel length is going to play a really big part. What ammo you're shooting is going to play a really big part. So shorter barrels and M855 are going to be the hardest to suppress. We recently did a flash video on those exact things. 10.5 inch barrel, M855 with muzzle devices, just looking at muzzle devices. And that's going to play a part in it too, because the muzzle device you choose on your mount is going to play a part in what that can's flash suppression is going to be. Okay? So any suppressor in general is going to help mitigate flash quite a bit. You're obviously going to want to stay away from titanium. Going to spark like a motherfucker. Polonium, at least in Andrew's testing, did better than Helios. I would say Helios, from a quiet perspective, is probably going to be a little better than Polonium, if I remember right, Ed here. But don't quote me on that because I literally don't remember. It's been a while since I've looked at it. At least what their testing was. The Surefire design, okay, it's mainly going to be one where gas is being able to cycle and flow fairly well. And that's going to typically help mix up and burn powder, right? Now, that would then make you think like a Huxworks can, okay, because it's got flow, really high flow characteristics, would be good for flash. Well, that's not necessarily the case because it doesn't have much restriction in it as well. So, the Surefire is a pretty good fucking balance of flow through and gas clamping in the distal portion. So, the Surefire cans, they do well in that regard. In this case, I would say Surefire. I have not seen a direct test to polonium, versus a surefire suppressor of the same length, because that's going to play a part too. So I really can't answer, but these are the things you're going to want to kind of keep mentally in mind if you do ever um, get to this point, where you might be able to test those directly. And I'm not really aware of anyone who's shot them back to back. Andrew might have shot the polonium versus some surefire cans. You should ask him. I would reach out to him and ask him. I don't know if he did or not, but it's not a question I can definitively answer because I haven't personally tested it, and I can't think of any time I've seen anyone test the polonium versus the surefire. Pure Performance put out the Super Duper Tulsa, Oklahoma. Pure Performance is where you could buy the Super Duper. That is true. I'd hate to mess this mad shrimp up. Not sure what we're regarding into that. It'd be pretty hard to mess up. Would you be able to explain how the e-brake would help the tone of my Sandman S? Tone is going to be directly tied to frequency, and how it's going to change the frequency. I mean, I can't tell you what's going to necessarily control that. Typically, just even adding length is going to change tone in general. So um, that's honestly not actually been studied very deeply. What internal features change frequency so much. Now, I mean, there is going to be a decent amount of correlation to how quickly you're releasing gas out of the suppressor. That is going to deal with tone as well. So, for instance, look at polonium, it tends to hold it for a long time, release it kind of slower, right? Um, and that's going to have an effect on frequency. A lot of people put a lot into tone, and tone is important, um, but not a ton is actually known about what inside the can help change it too much, if that makes any sense. So it's an area that really further research is needed. Thank you for your question. Is going to Nomad over the Sandman? Yeah, I mean, if you're okay with the bigger outer diameter, Nomad is probably going to be of course, the better choice than the Sandman. There's always a give and take, though, right? In that. Hey, good evening. Anyone here like the Grizzly gun lathe? I don't know if you've gotten a chance to watch my lathe buyer's guide on my Patreon. Precision Matthews is where it's at, man. That or old American Iron that has the same specs of what you need. That said, the more expensive Grizzly lathes are definitely going to be better than the smaller lathes are quality wise. But if you're looking to do gunsmithing, get a Precision Matthews. Spend the extra money. Trust me. Hey man, I want to run off and get another drink right now if you guys are all right with it. I think I actually might have covered everything I technically wanted to cover. So I'm going to go grab another drink. You guys can put your questions and I will answer them. All right, we are back. Andrew shot the RC2 against the Polonium. Polonium fared very well against it. The RC2 had some baffle glow, whereas the Polonium didn't. RC2 seemed to be king in first round pop. That's interesting because, in theory, right, RC2, if you know what the baffle looks like and how the porting is, first round pop should be something it kind of possibly struggles with a little bit. But that said, right, if you've looked at how we've studied first round pop over the years, because it's a very interesting creature. I like to think of first round pop kind of like this. It's I've tried to think of metaphors to kind of explain it a little bit. So let's say you had a bathtub. This bathtub was capable of holding 40 gallons of water. And that first shot was equivalent to 40 gallons of water. Well, it can hold it, right? Or maybe your first shot's 42 gallons of water, so it's got a little bit of overflow, right? The can isn't capable so much when it's get that little extra powder, that little extra fire in it. That oxygen content's going to ignite that powder. Maybe the can isn't as capable of handling that charge, right? Now, let's say the next can is a bathtub capable of 45 gallons of water in performance. Well, suddenly, you go and you shoot 42 gallons of water into that motherfucker, it's capable of handling it. Some might slosh over the sides, whatever. But for the most part, it handles it a little better, therefore it has a little bit less first round pop. Right? So and then the next rounds, you throw that, because that oxygen is burnt out of the can, well, you didn't have as long to fill up the bucket of water, so now it's only a 38-gallon bucket of water you're throwing in there. And the can can completely handle it or whatever. I don't know if that's going to make any sense to you guys at all, but that's kind of how you have to think about first round pop. So some cans, the first round might be super overbearing. It just can't fucking handle it. And then suddenly you get this real high level intensity on that first round. But all those cans after that, are those shots after the deoxygenation phase, no problem. Well, now you get this real big drop. So now it's perceived that there's a ton of first round pop. So then let's say you get another can and all of the rounds are up here. Well, this might not have a lot of first round pop, but they're all up here, right? They're all way more intense than this guy over here. So which one's better at that point? So when you go out and you shoot a suppressor, right, and you have no equipment to measure anything, whatever, and you go, man, like the Mod 9 and the Obsidian were a good one for this, actually. A lot of people would always tell me, oh, the Mod 9 has a lot of first round pop compared to the Obsidian. Well, when you meter it, it's very evident because the Mod 9, its first round is up here. Obsidian is pretty much doing the exact same thing. Obsidian's second round is like right here, but Mod 9's second round is like down here, right? So you're getting this perception of a ton of first round pop. It's not louder in any means than Obsidian, for example. It's just getting drastically quieter in its subsequent rounds. And then it tapers back up and normalizes like most cans do. So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if it will or not. But. What are your thoughts on CGS's size, whatever the hell their new fucking can is, when it hits the market? Do you think it will be a good challenger against the Volume? Look, I think CGS is one of the best companies on the market. I think that's really for like our little B team group of dudes who are making cans, the only competition. I really like CGS, and I think that they would not put out a can that isn't going to be a smashing hit, especially when you know all the R&D they put into it. I mean, I've seen them probably do, at least 10 prototypes. So, and that's just the ones we know about. So, I mean, why would they put out a can that doesn't try to beat everybody? Some companies will do that, right? Not to talk shit about Dead Air, but Sierra 5 looks great, looks cool. Did a smashing job on that from that front. Probably it definitely quieter than a Sandman probably is. Um, Polonium, I've looked. I mean, we've metered it. I would say Polonium's quieter than Sierra 5, not by much, but a little bit overall. But CGS tends to do things a little bit different, more in line with how we kind of do things. And I suspect it'll be a very good can, you know. And I expect, especially when they got their when Pew Science published the CGS Helios QD results on 556, a lot of people were underwhelmed by it, right? And I think they probably took that hard. You'll see where they went and they immediately started trying to design a new mount that would better utilize their coaxial area to make it work better. In response to that, right? Which is exactly what I would do if I was them, or redesign the can from the ground up, of course. So I have a lot of faith that they will probably put out something that most of us would want to own, and that will put the bar in another spot that we'll then have to compete against, right? And if it does not do that, well, then it doesn't do that. It'll still be a very different can than some of these other cans, right? So right now we literally don't know enough about it to really say anything. It's more or less an unknown right now. They're gonna, obviously they already are sending some out to people who are shooting them. That really doesn't mean much to me personally. I have very little faith in any of the YouTube reviewers. It's kind of odd to say that as someone who technically is a YouTube reviewer. But we'll see, right? I want them to do well. I literally want them to do well. I want them to move the bar up. And I have a lot of faith that they're one of the few companies who will move the bar up. So we'll see. Would you say the Super Duper is a basic / generic suppressor? I would say the cone design is not generic or basic, but it is like it's going to be a step up from like a typical conical, single angle cone for sure. It was meant like that's literally what it was designed. Like it was literally that shape was designed to be better than what most people were putting out at the time. And then things, went from there. I think it's going to also depend on what you're shooting it on. I'm kind of right now looking at it in a new light than I did a year ago. We're going to go over all this in the review when we go over the data more. I haven't actually graphed it yet. But if I was going to use that basic shape in a can, I would definitely change some things about it. Especially some of the transitions and some of the joints and things of that nature and some of the proportions. But it is a better cone than a lot of things out there. But again, it's all how you use it, right? What makes a suppressor after the cone itself is the spacing and the clipping. So you can take the best fucking cone in the world, let's say space it too tight or fuck up the clipping, and to completely destroy the can and make it so when you're like so for anyone who does like R&D on cone, like suppressors, for example, you might come across a cone design and only test it one, let's say, way and find it isn't superior to another. But if you don't necessarily understand some of the basics about how that cone actually works, which I would argue most people will not, even though they're designing the cone in the first place, it's just an idea of a shape to them, they might discard it, and it could be the best cone in the world if certain other things were applied to it. What is my opinion on media and suppressors? Water, oil, gel, just a gimmick, or do you see real advantages to switch? No, I mean they work. They don't last very long, but they absolutely work. There's no doubt that they don't work. Um, Water, oil, ultrasound gel, wire pulling gel. I mean, it absolutely works. I got a whole tub of it on top of my fridge right now. It works. I mean, of course it works, right? Wipes are where there is a lot more misunderstanding and gimmicky stuff going on. We did a video just this Wednesday, or was it Thursday? I forget. So if there was ever a pistol can out there that a wipe was going to make it better, I would say the RSP would be the one because of the coaxial area that it has for a blast chamber, because of the volume it has and its piston configuration, because of its clip depth and width, because of its large distal chamber. If there was ever going to be a pistol suppressor put on a semi-auto or full auto host that then used an end cap wipe and gained suppression from it, this would be the can to do that. Watch that video if you want, but I think you can already probably tell what the results were. Now, don't think that doesn't mean if you were to hold the slide closed and single action shoot or use a bolt gun that a wipe might not be beneficial, because then of course it would, because then all we're doing is looking at sound generated from the muzzle end, not from the port end. That's totally different. That also means you can take a lot of mediocre suppressors at that point and make them quite a bit better by adding an end cap wipe. Without saying any names, Hollywood Quiet with an end cap wipe. That said, what happens to your accuracy at that point? That's a video we're going to do at some point. By the way, 200 rounds of 6.5 Grendel brass at $100 is what I paid for it, which, believe it or not, was, I think, still a deal over trying to pick up new brass. For the most part, you can get some Starline every once in a while. It pops up for about 100 rounds for like $50 to $75, but I'll take it. Why did I get 6.5 Grendel brass? Is it because I like 6.5 Grendel? No. You can resize it for 6 arc, and 6 arc brass is damn near impossible to get. 6 arc ammo is damn near impossible to fucking buy. So I'm so happy to finally have enough brass that I can start loading the 6 arc more. Just got a new reloading table. Have not moved over the everything yet. Want to do it this weekend, but I won't have time. Unfortunately, I might have to go into work tomorrow unexpectedly. Also, new upper, 12.5-inch mid gas length, 5.56, running a Superlative Arms gas block. I got a good deal from a friend who had an extra Geisley handguard, so yes, it's a little too short for this gas block. I don't care because I got a good deal on it. I want to say this is I forget which upper I bought. I can't remember now. Nothing too special though. I think it was like a Sharps, if I remember right. Maybe paid like $130. It was a Aero Precision, bolt carrier group. Nothing too crazy there. The barrel's a Faxon 12.5-inch mid. One surprising thing about that was that it came with a 625 gas journal, so that was a little bit annoying. I wasn't expecting that. But the point is that 12.5 mids on 5.56 with a suppressor with a tuned gas system are pretty much supposed to be the bee's knees, the best balance of short barrel and suppression. So we're gonna find out. I haven't shot it yet. I put it together last weekend and ended up shooting some other stuff instead. But at some point, we're going to do a video. We'll probably shoot the 12.5. We'll shoot the 10.5. We'll shoot the 18. We'll probably shoot maybe 2 or 3 different suppressors. And we'll really dig into the data and we'll look and see what kind of differences are we getting. As far as tuning goes, though. So my 10.5 that we test with, right? Adjustable gas block as well. It's meant to mimic a tuned gas system, but not too aggressively tuned. So what does that mean? It means that we can shoot it all day long with supers without a suppressor, and it'll run just fine. We could obviously choke it off more with a suppressor, but that's not the goal. So for the video at least, we're going to tune this 12.5 the same way. We're going to run unsuppressed, and we'll tune it back to run unsuppressed with the least amount, of gas possible. With the same exact lower that the 10.5 is running. And then we will test everything. And then we'll run the 18 as well. Same kind of deal. The 18 runs unsuppressed. And then maybe if you guys want to see, we will dial this thing back to only run suppressed. Now, obviously, that is going to change with each different suppressor. Every suppressor is going to have different back pressure characteristics. So that's where it gets a little bit more tricky, right? But we'll at least see what kind of like our max amount of performance we can get out of a shorter barrel with a longer gas system can be if we do dial it back to just run suppressed. And we'll look at all 4 data sets, which will actually probably be more data sets if we do 2 or 3 cans, obviously. So it could get a little complicated, but we'll work through it. And we'll see what conclusions we can draw and just how truly viable the 12.5 really is when you do start tuning gas systems. The beauty of it is that you might be able to use more restrictive suppressors and get good results, right? So instead of having to use some more of the kind of flow through or lower back pressure type stuff, and that's where the beauty might lie. The other thing I've been really wanting to run for you guys is, Superlative Arms does their gas block where you can either, have it in restrictive mode, aka you're regulating the gas, right? Or you can do in the unrestricted mode where now instead of choking the gas port off, basically, you're leaving the gas port fully open, but instead of letting it all go to your BCG, you're venting some of it to the atmosphere, right? Well, that's a source of noise then, right? So is that a good thing or a bad thing? And that's another thing I really want to test and look at, because adding a third noise source, but then possibly still decreasing your port pop and things of that nature, will those two things balance out in a give and take? Will it be better to go into an unrestricted state with your gas block over a restrictive state properly tuned? Very interesting to have that answer, right? Because right now, I guarantee you no one out there has that answer. At least not from anything more than, okay, my brass is cleaner, my mag is cleaner, that type of thing. But what is more quiet? So that is something I want to look at as well. Hopefully you guys find that interesting. I knew an old man who doctors told him if he didn't stop drinking, he would die. He said he was going to drink till he stinks, and he did it. Well, like I said, I only drink one day a week. And I stopped drinking for like years. I didn't really start drinking again until about last December. We had a work Christmas party, and I tied one on for like the first time in years. And I was like, man, I kind of miss this. So I was like, yeah, if I feel like drinking on a Friday, I'm going to drink on a Friday. I drank last Friday, but I didn't drink the 2 Fridays before that. So is what it is. Doctors always tell you should stop doing everything. Anything that's fun, they're going to tell you to stop doing, and they're probably right. But what's life if you don't have a little bit of fun, man? It's just personal. Like my dad. My dad is skinny as a rail. Never drank. Never done any drugs. Didn't ever party. Married his high school sweetheart, right? I mean, we're talking like never done really anything fun in his life other than play baseball. And that's literally the funnest thing my dad's ever done in his life. And he technically has diabetes. And the doctors are constantly telling me, he can't eat this, can't do this, can't do whatever. And man, you go out with him and he won't do anything. And it's like, Dad, how can you enjoy life at all at this point? Like every once in a while, like we went out for his birthday and he picks a restaurant and we go to this restaurant, but yet he won't eat anything at the fucking restaurant. How is that living life? Like, I get and then he's scared, right? Because the doctors go, oh, this number is bad and this number is bad and you can't do this and you're out of control. It might be bad, but it doesn't mean you're gonna fucking die. I got another buddy who has diabetes. His A1C numbers are through the fucking roof, and he's a fairly well formed guy. He's my age, he's in his mid 30s, and he pretty much does whatever he wants and has no problems, no circulation problems, no nothing. Just that the number is super high. That's it. And they think, oh my God, you should be dead with your number this high. Yet he's perfectly fucking fine. So, I'm no doctor, but I've dealt with them enough in my life. Talking about superlative, they highly recommended bleed off used. I've talked with them a lot recently and took a bit to get my rifles to eject brass from 3 or 4 o'clock. Okay, yeah, I get they're going to highly recommend the bleed off, right? And I get the bleed off works. Absolutely. Of course it works, right? Like that's what it's supposed to do. I guarantee you they've never metered a single suppressor in their life. So again, it goes back to what you want. Some people get like, oh, my brass is dirty. Like, who gives a fuck if your brass is dirty or your bolt carrier group's dirty? As long as the rifle continues to run reliably at 2,000 rounds or whatever, whatever doomsday scenario you want it to run in, then it doesn't fucking matter. So then which is quieter? Restrictive or blade off? Blade off might be quieter. It's possible. Depending on the barrel length, that's going to be a big part because that noise source how close it is to the shooter's perspective, and when it occurs in time is going to be another. It's obviously going to occur prior to venting from the muzzle end of the suppressor, right? So we're going to get an earlier exposure than what we would have without it. It just depends on how loud it is, basically. We can get some preliminary results with our peak numbers the way we do. And then really to do it properly, this would be one of the few times where I think full waveforms would actually help us, right? Because I can run all the same ear modeling that Pew can, but we can still get a pretty good. Really, where the modeling comes in is results that are very close together. Springco, Red Spring, and Ka H3 allowed me to have some adjustment left in bleed off and get proper ejection. So my 10.5, again, it's tuned to run with no suppressor reliably over a lot of different ammos. So it's not overly aggressively tuned, but it is tuned, right? So I run a 3-ounce buffer from Spikes. So technically that's a little lighter than an H2 or an H3. I forget. I think that means it's a little lighter than H2, and just a regular carbine spring. Just like we saw when we tested delayed bolt carrier groups. A lot of people are always going, oh, run more buffer, run more spring, keep that bolt closed longer. Like, part of keeping a bolt closed longer also means that the bolt is going to open with less force back, and that has a lot to do too with suppression at the ear for a shooter. Okay, the longer the bolt is open, the more noise that comes out of it. Okay, now there's a third component to that: how much pressure is in the barrel, especially down at that, because there can be more pressure up here than there is back here at the chamber, versus this time component of how long the bolt is open to shut. So it gets very difficult, because there might be scenarios where you're okay with opening it sooner where the pressures are higher, as long as it's cycling very quickly, open shut quickly, if that makes any sense. Silencer Co. a while back did a video about bolt speeds on 5.56 rifles. They were very selective in what they put out from a data point. But they used graphs, and the beauty of a graph with known values on it means a guy like me can copy that graph, make a photo of it, take a screenshot of it, blow it up real big, figure out the values, here to here, use a micrometer to figure out percentages between those values, and plot data plots on every single point, and get the data that they didn't share. And I did it. And it took me a week to do. And I've got a whole fucking big old thing. I'll show it to you guys if you want to see. 2 different rifles, like 4 different suppressors, a bunch of different buffers, springs, all kinds of shit. Meter data that, I was able to break down and figure out bolt speeds, suppression at those speeds, what the buffers were doing. And I built an entire Excel sheet that at some point we're going to do a video on. Yeah, see, like this one right here, for example. This is bolt velocity for a Mark 18 with a Sacred suppressor. You've got standard buffer, H3 buffer, H buffer, H2 buffer, HSS buffer, which I forget what the weights were on that, HX buffer, and then you've got your modeled bolt speeds, and then you can go look at the little bit of suppression data that they posted, and you can make some extremely interesting findings with their data that they didn't really post, but posted. And that was a lot of fucking work. But there's a lot of interesting stuff about bolt speeds and suppressors, and at some point, we'll talk about it. So, there's bolt velocity with an OSS can. Bolt velocity with an M4 carbine, a regular M4 carbine. This is their hybrid suppressor. So then you can look at kind of those suppressor designs, right? And you can start drawing some conclusions about restriction in cans, timing, and all that stuff. My dad drank and made it to 94. Yeah, my grandpa smoked 3 packs a day of the nastiest cigarettes you can think of. He was a Marine, World War II. Fought the Japanese. Used to say he went on a camping trip for 22 months. Got blown up on Quadrilene. Had fucking scissors and bullshit left in him they didn't find until the 90s. I never met a tougher son of a bitch in my life, man. And he lived until almost 90 years old. Had every fucking thing wrong with him. You could think of diabetes and all that stuff. Would still have a drink. Used to drink. He's from Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh. And would drink, what's that green? Nah, I can't remember now. The green bottle, I don't know, man. I can't remember, but it's pretty crazy. Yeah, man, doctors do a lot of guessing. They do a lot of statistics. I mean, they don't know. Everyone's different, Do you think the Huxworks Flow 556 can has more that can be improved, or do you think it's at peak performance? Man, it's tough because they're probably in violation of some patents as it sits right now. And, yeah, we'll see. What they changed was at least smart. It took them a while to finally get there, but they got there finally. Again, it's, you make these coaxial chambers, right? But how they flow is important. And they finally kind of had a little bit of a light bulb moment there, finally, and changed a little bit of how fluids communicated with some of it, and that added additional gas clamping in the distal, right? And that's why it finally starts to improve a little bit. If you're curious about those cans, would I buy one? Sure. If I'm going to run it pretty much on short barrel 5.56. If you're going to run it on like 12.5 or under 5.56, then yeah, it's probably a really good choice right now. If you're going to run it on like your 14.5, 16, 18, no, I wouldn't. that whole can works via the fact that it needs a lot of pressure to work, and the fact that your shorter barrel stuff, like your Mark 18s, for example, tend to be very back pressure sensitive, and that's why it gives it that edge. But you go and you stick it on a longer barrel gun where there's already going to be less pressures and less back pressure sensitiveness because of the longer gas system, the longer barrel and whatnot. Now that performance margin is going to do this quite a bit. So, like every suppressor, there are typically sweet spots for every single design. Sorry, I'm looking at a message someone sent me. Okay, we've been doing this for 3 hours. I'm tired. I'm sure you guys are all tired. You guys on the East Coast, it should be midnight at this point. So I think we've lost most of you guys. We've lost most of you. So why don't we go ahead and wrap it up here? We'll see you guys next week, and I appreciate you all tuning in. Tanqueray and gin in the green bottle. No, I was talking about beer. He used to drink. Here, I'll Google it real quick. What the hell's that shit called? Rolling Rock. I didn't even need to Google it. He used to drink the Rolling Rock. Now it's a little bit more mainstream than it used to be back in the day. And then he would smoke these cigarettes. It started with a T. It was like Triton, Trenton. I always remember as a kid going with my grandmother to the grocery and buying cartons of them. And it was like a cigarette that literally no one else would buy, but he liked it. Chris made it the whole live this time. Well, Chris, I know it's midnight where you're at, brother. It's time to go to bed. I hope you don't have to be up too early tomorrow. I got to be up by. I get to sleep, so I got to go into work tomorrow, but I do get to sleep in an hour later than I normally do. So all good, and it's not nearly as late here as it is where you're at. It's only 9 o'clock here, so I'll probably be in bed by 10, and we'll be up by 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we'll have a good day tomorrow. I'm still very tempted on. I'm still very much so debating, I should say, what we're going to do next week. Well, I know you guys have been waiting for this guy for a while, this long can. Um, I'm very tempted to do a bunch of 300 blackout stuff, which is something else you guys have asked for, so I'm tempted to do it. The other thing that's very tempting to do here coming up is that if you guys refer to our ranking charts, what we were talking about, our final conclusion here when we did the RSP, there was one suppressor, one form run suppressor that utilized a few different, oddball things like our CGS piston, a little bit bigger blast chamber, that, did really, really well and very close to kind of the RSP. It's longer though. So I mean, no matter what the RSP appears to be beating it, but we're going to need to shoot the RSP against that particular suppressor and see if that narrow gap we have is as narrow as we think it is, or if it's actually a little bit bigger. Because again, nothing will ever replace, no matter how good your metering equipment is and your data collection and your process, will ever replace same day suppressor testing, no matter what. We can get very close, but nothing will ever replace it outright. So that's the whole point. We rank our cans, we look at our data the way we are, so then we can address areas where things are close to then go back and directly test those two things. Could have been green label. Like I said, I'm talking about beer. He would always drink those Rolling Rock beers. He wasn't much for a hard alcohol kind of guy. It was all about his cigarettes and his beer in the evening. Dave's not here, man. Yes, sir. Have a good one. I'm shooting my diligent defense. Oh, that's right. So Chris at Suppress Nation, he just got an enticer. I know we spoke about that in the beginning of the video, but I'm very much so looking forward to your opinion because obviously I really like getting feedback from people who I know who have shot, a large amount of cans in their life. And I know you've shot, a good amount of cans. So it's always nice to get that opinion because no matter what, we can meter all the cans in the world. Our technology has gotten really good on that front, but there's still not technically a replacement for general feedback, back to back feedback. So, but I have no doubt you're going to like it, especially when you got to think about the enticer. It's going to be shorter than your Nomad L. It's going to be shorter than your Hyperion. It's going to be 1625 instead of 175, so it's less volume. You know, so it's doing a lot in a smaller package. So you got to keep that in mind too. Part of where the Enticer didn't get as good of a composite score was because our muzzle numbers were a little bit higher than Nomad L and Hyperion. That's directly correlated to volume and length. That's literally what muzzle numbers tend to be. That and more cones. You put more cones in a can, it might shoot the out of ear up high, but you'll always get quite a bit lower muzzle numbers. So restriction is restriction. You're looking for this balance of the two. And what do you care about? Do you care more about the person who owns the can, how they're going to, how the can's going to affect them, what kind of hearing damage they're going to get, or do you care more about what the deer hear? It just depends. Everyone's a little different. Goes over there. Speaking of that, we're fixing to meter some 22 cans here soon. Started modeling that up the other night. This is probably my favorite right now. Pew pew. Want to see an interesting pistol? Oh, no, I don't want it. So this frame I made a very long time ago. This frame had a giant hole right here and another one right here and a lot of plastic welding and shit later. I filled them all in. Had to redo the mag well. It was all way too tight because of all the filler. Getting that all smooth. And I did this all by hand. This was a long time ago. I didn't have any freaking tools other than like a Dremel at the time. And now it kind of has like that SIG kind of look to it. But it's still a little rough, obviously. Again, I mean, my attention to detail back then was pretty mild. And then I stippled it and basically this whole gun is just a bunch of scrap parts laying around. We got like I forget what's that, like a timber wolf or what, lone wolf trigger, old trigger parts I had laying around that then I remade. I think that's like an older Silencer barrel. Yeah, Silencer barrel. The slide is just a generic Glock 19 slide. I don't even know where it came from. Random backplate. Just a little bit of random everything. There's a 3D printed magwell. It's broken though. See? You just take it off because it's basically fucking just annoying at this point. But, it's basically a freebie pistol. So I keep it around. One of many. All right, fellas. We'll see you guys later. Worst part of going to work the next day is putting all the toys away at night. Man, the worst part of all this is getting all the shit loaded up in the truck to go meet her. I mean, I'll have to go through the night before and kind of figure out what I got to take, and do I have the right tools with me, or do I have the right, this, that, muzzle device, ammo. There's an hour of prep the night before, and then in the morning, you gotta load all that shit up and everything, and some stuff stays in the car, the truck. Driving the rental right now, unfortunately. Which, by the way, they wanted to total my truck. If you guys didn't know, I might as well tell you the story. And they tried to value my 04 Tacoma, lifted Tacoma, tonneau cover. You can't buy the damn thing. 4-door, not the 2-door. Literally, I could not find another version of my truck for less than $20,000. And they were trying to say it was worth $7,000. I'm like, you guys are high. So they were trying to total it out. I made a huge stink. They also wanted me to take it to a different shop. Now, if you guys don't know, I work in the automotive world. The shop I have it at is a good friend. They're probably the best shop in town. And because of that, they charge a little bit more. They do a little bit better work. Well, the insurance company doesn't like that about them, that they charge a little bit more. So they didn't really realize that I obviously knew the shop and that, I have a background in this kind of stuff. And the claims guy, once he found out my truck was at that particular shop, he gets on the phone and he tries to pretty much intimidate me and slander, that particular shop, to get me to remove my truck from that shop and send it to a shop he wants it, where they'll get it done cheaper. And of course, I'm like, no, so I make a big stink out of it over the phone with this guy, and we go back and forth. And I mean, I get a little hot, but I'm debating with him in a logical manner, in a truthful manner. What we think happened is that the phone call probably got flagged, by like a quality control type thing. So long story short, the next day, a girl calls me, first off, and she tries to tell me my truck is now totaled and that she is now dealing with my claim. So then that whole phone call, turns into a giant fiasco. And I'm like, look, there's no way my truck is totaled. First off, I have the estimate right in front of me, which you guys haven't sent me an estimate. The body shop sent me the estimate because, of course, I'm friends with them. So I know exactly what the repair is. It's $7,000. So your total loss procedure is 75% of the value prior to the accident. So 7,000 as a total loss would mean you're valuing my truck somewhere between like 8 and 9-ish, assuming, it just depends, they didn't tell me the exact percentage we were over, right? So in that case, I mean, it could be as low as 7, right? It could be at 100%, So I'm like, you guys are freaking high. There's no way this thing's totaled, and there's absolutely no way I'm totaling it. Now, you guys might not know this, but you have a ton of power as over the insurance companies, especially if you have comprehensive insurance. Most people get pushed by or ran over by their insurance companies. You have so much power, it's crazy. But long story short, they go, okay, well, I go, first off, I want to know the scrap value of my vehicle, what you're going to be able to sell it for afterward when you total it. Because I guarantee you my truck will scrap for more than what, all that. Second, I want to see the exact way you're valuing my vehicle, because I promise you I will find plenty of sources that will value it higher. So they go, okay, we'll send it to you right now. Wow, that was a Friday, and I didn't hear a word after that. So by Tuesday, the adjuster who was the original douchebag, he apparently either lost his job or got transferred out of the city, from what we've been told. By Thursday, an entirely new guy who's extremely nice has taken over my claim, got with my body shop, agreed it's not totaled, and now it's getting everything it needs done. And they're coming out Tuesday, this next Tuesday, to finalize everything. And then, of course, it's getting fixed. So it's just been this giant fiasco, this entire thing. So bad because, too, this shop in question had heard that this other dude was talking shit to a lot of customers, but they didn't have anything like concrete until me. So, I mean, they were literally like, man, are we going to have to get a lawyer and literally sue Progressive? Things of that nature. So, luckily now it's not going to go that far. But if you got Progressive insurance, unfortunately, they've gone way down. Geico's not that great either. So, I got to get with them and figure out what car insurance I need to switch to, because insurance is super important, but man, you've really got to stay on top of it. Yeah, it's getting done. It's getting done by someone I trust. It's getting done the right way. Like I really trust. Like I know these people very, very well. And that's the thing. Like they literally have a reputation at this point, because Sean's the owner, and Sean owns a bunch of different businesses. His son is what's his face, who drives NASCAR. NASCAR drivers current. I'm a little drunk, so I can't fucking remember names at the moment. Alex Bowman. So Sean Bowman, his son is Alex Bowman. So what's he, number 3, 4, 5, 6 in the points right now? So it's pretty cool. But anyway, totally off topic. But that's the thing. Like that's what Sean does, right? He expects to do the best work, and he's a bit of a pain in the ass. He's even a pain in the ass for me, because I sell him parts for but his standards are just super fucking high. And you know what? The insurance companies are just going to have to deal with that. Yeah, they got to pay a little bit more. They got to use more OE parts than they want to use. But it is what it is. It gets done right, and it gets done well. It is what it is. So, okay. That ends us. We'll see you guys later.